There we go. Now it's actually looking right on this side. Now, so everyone can hear us in the live stream here. How's everyone doing? You're ready for the episode. Of course, North Central Positronics going against us here. Our tablet that we use for our sound stuff, sound clips, requires an update. Of course, all week, no issue. And then, like, right before we record, it's like, you need to do an update.
Software update needed.
Yeah, so we're waiting on that. Yeah, here for second to last episode, penultimate episode of the year, right?
Yeah.
So book club on some Detta and Odetta action.
Yeah.
So yeah, how's everyone doing in the live stream? Just kind of waiting for this thing to update before we start the show. Obviously, the had some pretty good reactions to the stand episode. Yeah,
I guess I should talk on mic. Sorry, did we?
Yeah, even because with me with the headphones, it's hard to hear you when you're not talking on mic.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
yeah, no, it was good. I'm glad it seems like the people that at least chimed in enjoyed it.
Is that how we're going to start the new year?
What?
Stand part 2?
No, it'll be in there somewhere, but probably not the first show of the year. That would be kind of strange, wouldn't it?
We are kind of strange, though. I mean, like, it's us.
Speak for yourself. I'm very normal and well adjusted.
Right, yeah. Okay. The guy that roots for all the bad guys.
I don't know about bad guys. Still waiting on my new show to finally get approved on the iTunes as well. So, of course, it's taken a little bit longer. I didn't know what to necessarily expect, but when they're like, it could take anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 weeks, I'm like, oh, cool. Maybe it'll be the same day. No, not going to happen, unfortunately.
Well, they don't like you.
But yeah, next time we're going to be getting into the flag debate. Right?
Flag summit.
Yeah, so that's going to be fun to end the year. All right, looks like the thing is back up. Let me just get it signed on here, and we'll be good to go to hang out with Detta, Peter's favorite character.
I don't not like her.
Detta?
Yeah.
Really?
I don't hate her.
I thought you despised her.
No. But I'm not going to go into that because it's a book club.
Well, we haven't started yet. I mean, if somebody's listening to the live stream, yeah, but yeah, podcast wise, this stuff won't be in the average podcast.
Oh, well, then, okay. Yeah, basically for me is that she redeems herself. Yeah, I didn't like her at first, but she redeems herself by becoming a member of the quartet, basically. She's a part of Susanna. So, useful.
Cody, yeah, indeed, honky muffas, indeed. Yeah, no, I love her though. I love Detta. I think she's great. I mean, of course, probably maybe offensive to some, but like I just love like the cartoony nature of it. I believe that we'll get to that in this, where the people are describing it as just like ridiculous, over the top, which I don't know. Yeah, it's fun. So yeah, we'll go ahead. We got everything up here, so we'll go ahead and hit the intro. We also have a new soundboard and stuff, so things, I don't know if things will sound any different.
Let us know if it does.
It's a different brand, so I have heard some of the reviews that maybe there's a little bit of differences, but I highly doubt that. I don't know if it'll be noticeable or not. So yeah, we'll go ahead and hit the intro and get started.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the dark tower came.
We are quartet, one from many. The palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's Magnum Opus, the Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for a book club, and that is book club number 11 for Drawing of the Three.
Oh my gosh, you remember to change the slide right away.
Yeah,
You're on it this week.
Sometimes I'm on it, I guess.
Wow.
Can't always be off, I suppose. So we're here for book club number 11. We'll dive right into the intro here. First of all, spoilers. There's really nothing spoiler to really warn you about unless you are somehow behind us in the book club, which means you'd be a really new reader because we're very slow at this whole thing. But yeah, if for some reason you're not about 50% of the way through Drawing of the Three, then maybe you have to worry about spoilers. But beyond that, you don't have to worry about it. We don't really go past what we're going to talk about. So this is episodes that we kind of made that way so that people maybe that haven't finished the entire series have something to listen to. So yeah, you don't have to worry about a whole lot on that. So next up, if you want to find us, you can find us on many places. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can find us on all your podcast services. iTunes being the biggest one, we are on there. If you can be so kind as to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, that helps the show be discovered more widely by people as they kind of browse the old iTunes store. And then next up, if you want to check out our show notes, you can find that at darktowerpalaver.com. Book clubs don't generally have anything for show notes. There's really not a lot to put notes on other than, whatever. I really don't know. I think in one of the earliest episodes, we maybe did some of the images that were in the book, but I think we kind of moved away from that because, I don't know, I think everyone sees those, right?
Yeah.
Or has seen them online. So that's the show notes, though, on our regular episodes. You'll see a lot on there with, like, the articles we cover and stuff. Next up, if you want to join the Palaver, as you are part of the quartet, you most certainly are welcome to do so. Peter can tell you the best ways to do that.
Best ways to do that is through email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. And we're on the Twitter. It's at darktowerpod. That's at darktowerpod. And then we stream our shows on youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. And you can also check out our old roundtables that we have on there.
Yeah, so with this episode, for instance, we're actually live streaming while we record it, although it won't be posted long-term as book clubs because we do listen to the some sound clips, and those get nixed pretty hard with copyright stuff on YouTube. But if you want to listen to us live, as we have a couple people in the chat currently now that are doing so, you're most welcome to do that. It kind of gets you the show a little bit early and allows you to interact with us as we're kind of going through this stuff. But you can look for our roundtables, but not our book clubs when it comes to posted on YouTube. All right, so we're diving in. Where did we leave off? So we're in what chapter are we in? I know we're on a sub-chapter 3, but again, it's a little bit easier for you to find the chapter. That's the only thing I hate about Kindles.
Chapter 1, Detta and Odetta. This is the Lady of Shadow, so it's like book 2.
Okay, book 2, chapter 1, sub-chapter 3.
Yep.
So we're diving now into, obviously, the second door, or we're at least approaching it. I think we're diving in technically before the characters do, so we're kind of getting a little bit of a heads up of what's, maybe what they're going to find on the other side of this door. And so that's kind of where we're at. Moving down the beach, got to the second door. We've taken the headlong dive into the door as readers, and we will probably during the course of this episode see Roland potentially jump through as well. So so starting off with subchapter 3, so let's see, I'm trying to remember, did we so where are we at? So we kind of got a little bit.
Yeah, Andrew is her limo driver.
Yeah.
He knows that something's wrong. He knows that sometimes she disappears. He's talking about Odetta, by the way.
Yeah, for hours or days in some cases.
Who we find out right here at the end of the first paragraph that she is she's quite wealthy.
Yeah.
And quite well known. In fact, she even gets on the cover of Time magazine.
Yeah, indeed.
Which is obviously a very big deal here to be on the cover of Time magazine. We find out that she's involved in the movement.
Yeah, indeed. So
which movement is that?
So, well, let's see.
Oh, yeah.
So you're getting a little bit into the tail end of the paragraph, right?
Yeah.
So I like this first part though. He looked at her suitcases with another wince, and they looked as if petulant men with small minds and large bodies kicked them relentlessly back and forth, damaging the bags in a way they did not quite dare to damage Miss Holmes herself. The way they may have damaged him, for instance, if he had been there. So we're kind of getting the picture painted for us that she was. I believe in one of the previous sub chapters it mentions that she was down in the South, right?
Yeah, it was
Oxford town.
Yeah, Oxford town.
Yeah, so that was mentioned. So she's down there, and he's basically picking her up on her way back from that, and he's kind of seeing some of the results of it. Not that she herself was necessarily abused physically, but certainly her bags and stuff were. So, and then as you jumped into it here, it kind of goes through and says that she is very prominent. She's wealthy. She was on the cover of Time, and she's a wealthy person, and that would probably make it a little bit tougher for some of these people that would rough people up in this era, because I don't know that it's fully been established yet, has it, that it's the 1960s? I mean, it's pretty clear by the context.
Yeah,
but does it say the 1960s?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
they talk about Kennedy.
That's right.
Being assassinated.
So this is only a few months. That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot about that, but it's pretty clear from the context that we're talking about the 1960s here with the
movement.
Yeah, with like the kind of the race, like struggle for civil rights and
what
stuff.
Was the civil rights movement? That's what it was.
Yeah,
that's what the phrase I was trying to remember. I was throwing it to you, and I could not remember that phrase.
Yeah, so I remember it saying there was some months after Kennedy's assassination. So I think we had ended up finding that it probably places us somewhere in about February of '64, with how many months because she ends up saying like how many days and months it's been since Kennedy's assassination. Yeah. So it puts us in there. So historically speaking, this is going to be the year that the Civil Rights Act passes with Lyndon Johnson. So, we're talking before that, though, obviously here. So you're definitely having people that are still fighting kind of against the racial prejudices of the day. So that's that. And let's see, the next highlight that I had said thing was it was a little bit harder to work yourself up to hurting a woman who was the heir to the Holmes Dental Industries when there were 12 Holmes plants in the sunny South, one of them just one county over from Oxford Town. Let's see. So they had done to her suitcases what they didn't dare to do to her. So then not only is she rich and stuff, but she's also probably going to have some prominence. She's got a number of places that are set up shop in the South. Like, she can. Yeah,
this isn't someone that's just wealthy in the North and has stuff up north in New York and Connecticut and Michigan and Pennsylvania. She has factories for her family's company in the South.
Yeah,
and not only
she wanted to harm them,
exactly.
and be like, completely, you could say justified in it, and she could just close down one of those plants and put potentially hundreds of people out of work and probably
and
hurt the local economy
families,
and stuff.
Yeah,
families. So I think that would definitely put it in a spot where you can kind of see why maybe it's a little bit tougher for her to have or to be beaten and stuff, as people obviously were. I mean, in this era, people, white or black, if they were involved in this movement that went to the South to kind of fight some of this stuff, there in some cases people were murdered, historically speaking. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I watched a documentary on it or something, but there was one that, these white kids, college kids, went down to kind of fight alongside all this. And I think 3 or 4 of them, they ended up getting murdered. And when it ended up coming getting figured out, it ended up being even the law enforcement of the town was involved in it.
Oh, the white kids?
They killed the white kids. They killed these kids that were involved in the going down to march.
They were
civil
supporting.
rights.
They were supporting the race movement.
Yeah, and they ended up being murdered. And when it ended up kind of being looked at a higher level of law enforcement, they ended up finding like the sheriff of the town was behind it. He had pulled them over and then kind of had some friends kind of jump them and murder them in the woods and stuff. So it was this is definitely a gnarly time. It's pretty bad time. So I guess just as a way of from my perspective of knowing history, it kind of adds to the story a little bit of the danger that she was putting herself in, despite the fact that she is rich and powerful when it comes to this kind of stuff. So what do you got? What do you got next?
Yeah,
there?
Next one is just skip one paragraph where basically Andrew, her driver, is just standing there looking at her luggage, just dumbfounded and a little bit angry as well. Howard was coming out to help, but Andrew passed a moment longer before grasping the handles of the case. Who are you, Miss Holmes? Who are you really? Where do you go sometimes, and what do you do that seems so bad that you have to make up a false history of the missing hours or days, even to yourself? and he thought something else in the moment before Howard arrived, something weirdly apt. Where's the rest of you? You want to quit thinking like that? If anybody around here was going to do any thinking like that, it would have to be Miss Holmes, and she doesn't, and so you don't need to either. So it's kind of one of the classic stories is that, you know, there's something wrong with someone and there's someone noticing it, and he actually nails it on the head from what we've seen so far, is that, you know, she disappears for hours at a time, which obviously we talked about last time.
Yeah, or days.
Hours at a time, days at a time, or weeks at at one point is what he says. We talked about it last time, the difference between what the classic, you know, Hollywood phrase is, you know, schizophrenia versus multiple personality disorder, which obviously we've already kind of diagnosed her with there. And that's what it comes down to there with that line, weirdly apt, where's the rest of you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the next line, I thought it was interesting that at the same time he corrects himself and says, oh, well, that's not my place. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be herself.
Yeah.
Which is kind of just interesting that we've seen that before where, you know, someone has a problem.
Yeah.
And they can't fix it, even though they know they have a problem. They know it's going to kill them.
Yeah.
Until someone steps in.
Yeah. And I think that, like, with him here, with Andrew, I think he's probably the only one really that's going to know, right? Like, is there anyone else that you think, like, with Way, I mean, because, you know, like, in general, do you think there's anyone that's going to know as much about her than, like, her drivers say? Like, for a person of her status, you know, unless she's married, we're not going to nobody's going to see the same kind of stuff as, you know, Andrew is. So I feel like he has a position to be there. But yeah, that in getting to the second paragraph where he kind of almost dismisses himself as, like, I feel like that's just kind of like the classic, like, day laborer, like, oh, that's above my pay grade. I'm just you know, blue collar driver.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not. It's not my place to.
Yeah, if he says anything, he feels like he's going to get fired. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, he's crossing that line, like you're talking about, of, you know, professionalism and common, you know, and workplace courtesy towards your employer.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't walk up to your CEO of your company and say, "Hey, dude, are you schizo? Are you mentally ill?
Yeah, are you mentally sound?
Do I need to check you into a mental hospital?" I'm pretty sure it's a good way to get fired, even back then.
Yeah,
So.
and especially back then. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and then we also, and then a little bit further down here, we have kind of a little bit of an introduction here with Howard as they pull up to the building. And then Andrew, he's lifting the bags out and handing them to Howard, who asks in a low voice, "Is she all right?" I think so. Andrew replied, also pitching his voice low, "Just tired is all, tired all the way down to her roots." So, you know, now we've got another one. Again, someone that, you know, if he's like kind of the doorman of her building, this is also going to be a guy. These are going to be like probably the two dudes that know more about her comings and goings, I guess, you know, and maybe her condition than anyone else. You know, she's not, unless she's presenting that stuff to other people. Like, these are the people that are going to kind of know. They're like,
yeah, we don't know if she's going to have like a close friend or a sister or, you know, anything like that. So far, we haven't had any indication of that. And looking at that, you know, like for me and you, I mean, obviously you have your family, I have my family, we have each other that would notice that. But, you know, for someone who's extremely wealthy, and I'm trying to remember, this isn't something that's really that spoiler. I think it's something that was in the past chapter, or subchapter, was how she's the only black person that lives in her building.
Yeah.
So I mean, even like neighbors, it's already kind of indicated that she's ostracized from them because she's black and she's uppity.
Yeah.
You know, in their view, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, their closed-minded views.
Yeah.
So it just kind of it's further demonstrating that this right here is just kind of confirming that this woman is kind of alone.
Yeah.
Is basically the way to look at it, is how I take it.
Yeah.
It's especially how I took it the first time I read it. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I feel like, because that's the way that it's framing itself. I don't think it's framing it in a way that she's going to be this, like, family person that has, like, 5 kids. It's
right.
Like, it just doesn't. Like, there's an isolation that's kind of written into the way that these first couple subchapters are reading. And, yeah, it just, you know, I don't know. Yeah, because even there, like, with what Andrew's saying in his mind and stuff, like, you know, would you have to ask those questions if you're Andrew, if she has a husband, you know, if there's other people around? Like, no, because then at that point it would just be like,
it's
on
them.
Yeah, maybe mention something to them, but like the fact that he's doing it, it kind of gives you like that Alfred Batman vibe of like, there probably isn't a whole lot around her. Like, and I feel like King does a really good job through this to kind of writing between the lines of kind of showing you that, you know, she's kind of alone, you know, when it comes, because we've talked a little bit about, like, I'm trying to think of the previous subchapters, like like a little bit about Oxford Town, the neighborhood she lives in and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you definitely get the idea that she's on her own, and we'll kind of get a little bit more here as we go on to find out more about her. And then a little bit, the tail end of this subchapter here says, when he was gone, Andrew took out the collapsed stainless steel scaffolding at the bottom of the trunk and began to unfold it. It was a wheelchair. Since August 19th, 1959, some 5.5 years before before the part of Odetta Holmes from her knees down has been missing as those blank hours and days. So there's kind of the big reveal that we have for this character, right? I mean, not only the multiple personalities, that is being alluded to, from Andrew and the disappearances and stuff, the dissociative fugue, I guess is what you could say, which we talked about last time. I remember horrifying you with that idea, where people just kind of disappear and start to live new lives, almost like mentally break.
I totally forgot to tell you. I told my wife about that, and she's not very happy about us talking about that. No.
Yeah, it's
because she did the same thing that I did. She's like, oh, this is like what this has happened to mentally ill people, and I'm like, no. And I explained it how you explained it to me, that
it just happens
this. I was like, this could happen to me tomorrow, and she gave me that look that she's just like, why did you bring that up? Why did you bring that up?
Yeah, of course you probably blame me. So.
Of course. You're the one that told me about it. I cast blame where blame is due, sir.
Yeah, something like that. So
I'm pretty sure she muttered #Tad is terrible too.
Oh man. So yeah, that's so we're kind of building the larger picture of who we're dealing with here. So we got someone that's rich, someone that's black, someone that's involved in the civil rights struggle. She's also someone in that time period, which is another thing to account for, right? Because Eddie was in 86, I think, somewhere in there.
87,
wasn't
it?
So you're talking about I think the book was in 87. I think it was maybe set a little bit. I thought it was 86 for some reason. Like 87 is the publication date, I believe.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. But so now you're talking about someone from a completely different era. She's rich, and then now she's going to be one that's in a wheelchair because she's lost a chunk of her legs. So that's an interesting, just one of those things to me, like just classic King, right? I feel like
you can't pull just, a heroin junkie, and the next person you pull also has to be someone who's missing the lower half of their legs.
Yeah, because we don't really know a whole lot about Roland's world beyond what we had in book one. This book hasn't given us a ton outside of a beach.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things, like when I think through book one, it's like, having someone that doesn't have legs, that's going to be kind of hard. Not even accounting for, like the fact that she's like having these blackouts and losing periods of time. It's like, that's also a huge thing where it's like, how are they going to deal with this? Like, because I think for me, like reading it the first time, like I kind of got the impression it's like, okay, he goes in, he helps Eddie, he pulls him out, so I kind of almost got the pattern immediately where it's like, okay, so there's going to be 3 more doors because the tarot cards and stuff. So he's going to get 2 more doors, 3 total, and he's going to get 2 more people, and that's going to be the group that we're going to probably. That's kind of like your what is it, the Fellowship of the Ring, right?
Right. Yeah, it's the group that's going to go and like that, because you kind of see the recruitment with Roland when he does it with Eddie. You'll see great wonders, and there's a chance you won't die, but there's going to be great risk, and there may even be bare-chested women, bare-chested women, and everything.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, Roland kind of hit the anti-lottery in the first guy because he's a fucking heroin addict.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, let's see what the second one is. Well, shit. So it's also just kind of setting up, dude, what's going to be behind door number 3?
Exactly. That's what I remember thinking that, like, about this point it's like, okay, so wait a minute, she's multiple personality. Now you're telling me that she's lost a good portion of her legs, so she's in a wheelchair. I'm like, what? Like, this is going to be quite the motley crew before we get. I mean, it already is at this point. Assuming that everything goes according to plan, and we end up with her outside of our world and into Roland's world. I was like, wow, this is a very interesting group of people.
Right.
Definitely fits King, though. I feel like a lesser author probably would have maybe given one of the things, but not both. Like, I feel like maybe she would have been multiple personality, but she would have had the full use of her legs if it was somebody else, in my opinion, a lesser author, and probably wouldn't have. I don't know. It feels like a lot of authors don't go as far as King when it comes to, like, really stacking things on his characters of whatever.
Especially the good ones. Like, even the good ones, a lot of authors will stack things, but it's always like, oh, that's overcomable. But with King, it always is feeling like
It's more real.
Wow, man, like way to shit on that character, but the real thing is, like you said, yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. I think of like things like The Shining and stuff, right? It's like not only
Yeah.
is he like a dude that deals with alcohol, but he also has rage issues and stuff.
Right.
You know, he's got a crumbling family because of his action. It tends to like build these things. And a lot of them are very real and things that you can like, I don't know, like not that you can fully grasp like what it would be like unless you are living in a similar circumstance. But I feel like King's always done a really great job, and I feel like that's what makes his characters so good is that they feel more three-dimensional because he does a lot more work to make them flawed, and in reality characters are flawed. We're all flawed, right, in one way or another. So I definitely appreciate that with Mr. King.
Subchapter 4 is a big one for it. So I don't know what sound clips you have, but this is one that I definitely would understand if you had one here.
Yeah, no, I actually don't have any sound clips in this one. So
Okay.
this one's an interesting one, for sure. Definitely an odd one. But yeah, getting a subchapter 4. I always tongue tie myself.
Subchapter 4.
No, just subchapter, and it gets me sometimes. So before the subway incident, Data Walker had only been conscious a few times. These are like coral islands, which look isolated to one above them. But are in fact only nodes in the spine of a long archipelago, which is almost underwater. Odetta suspected Detta not at all, and Detta had no idea that there was such a person as Odetta. But Detta at least had a clear understanding that something was wrong and that someone was fucking with her life. So you've established the characters that you have here, right? You have Odetta and you have Detta.
Yep.
And Detta, just from that line right there, strikes me as maybe a little bit more aware. Yeah, to know, because I mean it is kind of like the dissociative fugue in a lot of ways. Like, that's the thing that defines those, is there is no awareness until the person snaps back and realizes like, oh shit, I'm in another house and another bed, like, whatever. Like, but with this it's different because with multiple personalities, that'd be a person that's transferring in a fairly regular it's not bouncing to another like mental spot and then sitting there for 20 years. It's one that's cycling back and forth. So it's going to come down to a spot where one of the two is, chances are, it's going to realize that time is missing, or things have changed, like suddenly got a tattoo or something. I don't know.
So here's a interesting little side tangent, but that actually directly relates to this right here. Is on Black Friday, the book I had on my wish list, The Girl on the Train, was on sale for $5, so I bought it. Didn't use a credit, just bought it. I started listening to it a couple of days ago. I finished Mr. Mercedes.
Yeah.
I decided to take a break and listen to this new book before I go into book 2 and 3 of that series. In the book, so I don't know if did you see the trailer for it when the movie came out?
Yeah, I don't remember much.
It's like it's supposedly is like a murder mystery.
Yeah.
Kind of like Gone Girl, very very reminiscent of kind of like that.
Yeah.
And one of the main characters, because there's actually like 3 main characters, in the Audible version, they're describing blackouts, drunk blackouts. And she gives 2 examples about one guy in New Jersey who doesn't remember leaving the bar, doesn't remember stealing a car, just taking his car, driving the wrong way on the freeway and head-on collision with a van, killing 6 people.
Yeah.
The second guy, blackout drunk, doesn't remember getting in his car, driving to his childhood home 3 cities over or something like that, murdering the 2 people that live there now, taking off his clothes, driving home naked, had no idea what was going on until the police came and picked him up. So I thought it was just kind of interesting that I was listening to that, and now we're talking about this.
Yeah.
Because it's basically because the doctor who wrote the book that she was reading, because her husband didn't like her, the way she forgets what happened, and why she had to be sorry for things. The way the doctor said it is that when you get to a certain point, and this kind of goes along with like the multiple personalities, that when that flip switches for her, basically what it is that the short-term memory stops writing in her brain. And so you act differently because your brain's not inhibited now by, oh, I'm going to remember this embarrassing situation where I'm making an ass of myself dancing on this bar. I'm going to just, now I'm not going to remember this, so fuck it. I'm going to do whatever I want. And so it kind of made me think about this while I was listening to that. And then, of course, I was reading this for research and everything like that. And I remember that. And it's just kind of interesting that what I think of is Detta's going to have her short-term memories and long-term memories. And then Odetta's going to have her short-term and long-term. But the problem with Odetta was there is no blank patches. There is no one telling her, hey, where you been for the last week? Because Andrew covers that in the first couple subchapters.
Yeah.
that he like mentioned it a couple times where it's like, hey, where you been for the last 3 days? She's like, what are you talking about? You've driven me all 3 days.
Yeah.
And he's like dumbfounded because he doesn't know what to say to her because he hasn't.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
she firmly believes that. And then like even like the
So her mind is kind of filling the gaps.
Right.
And
So it's
Deda's is not.
is not. That's what it's saying right here is that she knows something's wrong.
Yeah. And then that could be the difference between the two for sure. But yeah, I certainly thought to myself that maybe she is more aware, whatever, for, like in a way I remember thinking to myself, kind of the way like the difference between Roland and Eddie, right?
Yeah.
Like Roland's aware of everything. We've seen that already in one full book. And then into this book, there's been times we've realized like, yeah, this dude's beyond anything we can comprehend in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I almost felt like that was like, I remember thinking that in the first time through here. I'm like, okay, so you kind of got an Eddie and a Roland in this person, like with the two personalities, like one that's maybe way more, and maybe that's overselling it a little bit, but that's what it felt like to me with this, is it was like, okay, one's like way aware of it, the other one's kind of diluting itself by filling the gaps. And like, so far, I don't know, some of the stuff that Eddie said, I think that maybe he is somewhat, I don't know, like, not delusional, but maybe he thinks a lot more positively and he has more of a shiny outlook than maybe Roland would have. I don't know.
Roland's definitely more of a realist when you look at things. Eddie talks about like his addiction and heroin and everything like that. Or the big telling factor is the end of Eddie's story about his brother and everything.
Yeah.
Roland's like, well, what the fuck you want to do about it? It's in the past. What the hell are we going to do about it now?
Yeah.
And Eddie was all worked up because he's like, you got to give me something, man. I mean, like this is it for me. Like I just spent 4 hours talking, and this is all you give me is like the past is the past. Like,
yeah,
come on. That's a perfect example of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right there is that Roland's that self-aware, that kind of guy that's like, me. It's a difference between me and you.
Yeah.
I'd come to you and I'd be bitching about a problem and everything like that happened, and I'm just like, well, this guy, this asshole and this he did this, and you're like, okay, what are you gonna do about it?
Yeah.
Like it really is a different personality thing, which is one of the reasons why I latched on to Eddie so bad and you latched on to Roland, is because that's how our personalities work.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like the old thing I've always said is that everyone's favorite Ninja Turtle is the one that's most like them.
Yeah.
That's my like what do you have those internet things where you take the little quiz and stuff? Like
Yeah.
I always ask people, who's your favorite Ninja Turtle? Because like it at least tells me something about them when I meet them.
Yeah.
Not always the first thing I ask them, but it is something I usually ask at some
Mhm.
point with the people.
Which explains a lot, because your favorite one is the asshole. So
I don't know about that.
he is no, dude. There's no arguing that Raphael's an asshole.
Hey, we don't need to go down too much of a tangent. I'm just saying, I would disagree. Maybe on the new show we could have a Ninja Turtles episode. Oh, okay. So next up it says Detta was least partially aware of the blanks. She could remember the china plate. She could remember that. She could remember slipping it into the pocket of her dress, looking over her shoulder, all the while making sure the blue woman wasn't there peeking. So yeah, this gets into a really weird element there. Like I don't know. There's like, this is a weird one because this whole next section here is like you're kind of getting like a lot of literal and figurative things that are going like tangentially. And I remember, especially with the audiobook, like this next bit is like all one paragraph, right? So it feels like just like an explosion of a lot going on, but I feel like it's crazy.
It's 2.5. It's over 2.5 pages.
Yeah, I was about to say, because I got like half a page, even the Kindle version, I have half a page here, a full page there, and almost a full page there. So yeah, like with the way I have it zoomed, of course, that changes things. But yeah, this is a huge paragraph, and especially when you're listening to it, because the way like an audiobook is read, like there's the breaks in it between paragraphs and stuff, and suddenly you don't have that with this. So it just feels like just like verbal vomiting in a way, even though it's not verbal, it's like mental. But I think Stephen King does a really good job here doing it, because I feel like you're going to find out some things about the character, but it's all kind of shadowy. I mean,
this was one of those
Lady of Shadows, right?
Yeah, this was one of those parts where when we first started book clubs, I got a little bit nervous.
Yeah,
about there's a couple parts throughout the series that I got a little bit nervous. One of the first ones was in the Oracle in the first book and all that, and then this is one of the big ones. Like,
yeah,
there's some parts in this that are just like, wait, that's a kid like talking about. Oh, this isn't an adult or anything like that. So it got to me. It made me uneasy. And King has a way of doing that with something that's not really that unnerving. Like, this character is not in any danger.
Yeah.
There's no immediate
a
existential
little,
threat.
I mean, a
or
little bit
anything.
though, as you're kind of going in and out. Like, there's points here where it seems like she's putting herself in danger. I mean,
Well, yeah, but I mean, danger from getting yelled at by her.
like, so here we kind of go through. So she's breaking a plate, and she's also pretty much masturbating while doing so.
Yeah.
And then you move down, and then it kind of just suddenly shifts, like almost in a single sentence, to talking about maybe it's a little bit further down here, because it kind of explains the dress, explains. So it's kind of, again, it's so weird because it's like just interwoven with like kind of like weird hypothetical stuff. I mean, it really does fit like the Lady of Shadows in a lot of ways. But then, like, yeah, right in the middle of this thing, she remembers no round china plate, but the round white face of a boy. So then suddenly, like in the midst of this sentence, you've shifted from her kind of in this weird whatever it was, the drawers, to this spot where she's with a dude in a DeSoto, if I recall correctly. I'm a little bit ahead. It'll be, I have to flip a page still, but and it's like connecting them, that it's like the china plate that she was breaking, the blue woman's china plate, is now like being seen as like his face is similar to it in shape and stuff like that. And then you're talking about going on with the plate again, and then like he is bleeding and like because he's been scratched, and he goes out the window to throw up, and then it starts to explain him being aroused and then going from aroused to not. So it's like, I feel like there between the lines you can kind of read that most likely she is seduced to this person into this situation, and then kind of violently attacked him, maybe, is kind of what it is seeming like to me as you read this. And of course reacts very violently, and that's what I mean by danger, is like, if this is the stuff that Detta is actually doing, like that, somebody could just turn around and kill you doing stuff like this, and then it's kind of goes on like neon light, the gravel, the parking lot. I mean, it's very interesting. And then it kind of gets here toward the end of this huge massive paragraph here, and it says, and then she was 23, and it was not panties but a rayon scarf, and she was casually slipping it into her purse as she walked along the counter at a nice notion section of the Macy's. A scarf which sold for the time at $1.99, cheap like the white nylon panties, cheap like her. The body she inhabited was that of a woman who had inherited millions, but that was not known and didn't matter. So that's a huge thing, as it kind of transitions out of this huge, like shadowy, weird paragraph. It kind of at least gives you an exclamation point on the end, where it's like, in the midst of all this, she has no comprehension that she's sharing the body with a person that's extremely wealthy. So
yeah, and then,
that's interesting to me.
Yeah,
like,
no, it is, and I actually forgot about that part from my reading. Is that jumps right there to the parking lot with the boy and everything like that. And then this last paragraph here. So sometimes, second to last paragraph. So sometimes she wondered in a distracted sort of way where she was when she wasn't here, but mostly her needs were too sudden and pressing for an extended contemplation, and she simply fulfilled whatever needed to be fulfilled, did what needed to be done. And then it says Roland would have understood.
Yeah,
and that kind of goes back to what you were talking about, and like the difference between Eddie and Roland as well, is like Roland would have understood. Just do what needs to be done.
Yeah. And I think where I'm at here, especially I remember the first time reading, as I'm trying to piece this all together, is I feel like you have kind of this prim and proper person that's Odetta, and then with this whole section here, I feel like you kind of get an indication of maybe who Detta is, and I almost feel like when that paragraph you just read about, kind of let's see where too sudden to her needs, which were too sudden and too pressing for any extended contemplation. It makes me think that like perhaps that Detta is like a tool of this person, basically, like the mental issue, maybe she doesn't have, like, she's always so prim and proper that she doesn't have like kind of
release.
Think about, I know it's a rough analogy, but think about like the movies where you have like the like the royal person that goes undercover and starts to live like a slob, right? You get it, you get that in Titanic, even like you and like I feel like there's an element of like letting your hair down, whether it's a male or female, and I feel like in a way more gruff way, obviously, and more obviously this is like a mental illness, but like that Detta is maybe this release for Odetta. Odetta doesn't fulfill some of these things, these, as it calls it, needs, here in the book. So it's like these needs of the person that maybe there isn't a balance there, to where Detta kind of comes out and comes through when like the body needs it in a way, like a release of some kind.
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, to the one that comes to my mind when you're talking about one of those stories is the one where it's the prince or the princess. It's been told several different ways. The one I know is my daughter loves the one with it's the Disney version where there's two Mickeys. There's the prince and there's the peasant Mickey. And they run into each other. They find out they look identical. They swap places because one is like, God, it would be nice to be a peasant and be able to do whatever the hell I want.
Isn't that Parent Trap too?
Parent Trap was the same way. Well, that one's a little bit different because
I thought I thought one kid was a little bit more wealthy and the other one was a little bit more like blue collar.
No, they're both pretty wealthy. I mean, well, it also depends on the version you look at.
I mean, relative.
There's
I only
four
watched
different versions.
Yeah, I only
now.
ever watched the original, and I thought there was. I mean, it's been 25 years probably since I've watched it, but I always thought there was an element of like the one kid was a little bit better off, and so for the one kid that switched into that, it was kind of a treat. But the other one, it was also a treat to not have to be like put your finger out when you drink.
Yeah, it was more of the mostly thing with the Parent Trap was mostly oh, what's my mom like? I thought my mom was dead. Oh, what's my dad like? I thought my dad was dead.
Not Parent Trap. I'm thinking, what's the one of the twins? The parents have twins. They split and they didn't ever tell it.
It's Parent Trap. Yeah, they pretend like the other one died. Basically.
Suddenly, I was thinking Freaky Friday got in my head for some reason. That's right, totally different movie where the mom and the daughter switch.
Yeah, there's another one where it's a princess. I can't remember what it is, but it's a pretty famous one where she just wants time where she doesn't have to have her responsibilities and everything like that.
Yeah,
and she wants to be like a rock star or something like that. And so she swaps places with someone who looks identical to her, of course, because there happens to be an identical version of her out there. But the thing with Odetta here is that, there is no identical.
Yeah.
There's her prim and properness like you're talking about, and there is no release. There is no chance to be...
Yeah, let your hair down and go to a bar,
like, like this, a honky-tonk and pick up a boy or something like that. She can't do that.
Yeah.
And then also like here, like at the bottom of the last page, it's talking about shoplifting. And then the paragraph over here that we kind of skipped talks about that the scarf was white with blue trim.
Yeah.
Which is exactly like the plate that she broke.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It's a symbolic thing for her.
Yeah.
But it's like, this all boils back down to her losing her legs.
Yeah,
is what we got coming up right here in this next section.
Yeah,
this next subchapter.
Yeah, subchapter 5. And I love this first part. Odetta could have taken a limo everywhere, even in 1959, although her father was still alive and she was not fashionably rich as she would become when he died in 1962. So there kind of gives you that indication of, at least when she lost her dad. I don't remember if we hear about her mom or not. But at that point, though, there was a transfer of wealth, obviously. So that would have been, a year before Kennedy's assassination. So to kind of put it in context, it's a couple years before where we're at reading-wise. And then it says the money held in a trust for her had become hers on her 25th birthday, and she could do pretty much as she liked.
Yep.
So, yeah, she's a little bit older than Eddie, a couple years, and at least when she got the money. We don't know where she's at now, I guess. We'll see. He died in 1962, so it doesn't really give us the indication of when she turned 25. But
Kennedy?
No,
the dad.
Her.
The dad.
It says her 25th birthday, the trust transferred the money to her, and she could do pretty much as she liked. Right. But it doesn't really give us an indication of
when that 25th birthday
when did that fall in? Yeah, what year was that? Yeah. So we don't know that, but and then it goes on and says that she cared very little for a phrase that one conservative columnist had coined a year or two before. The phrase is limousine liberal, and she was young enough to know she didn't want to be seen as one, even if she really was one. And I feel like that's a really interesting peek into the character.
Yeah,
because I feel like there's maybe this puts her in a spot where like she is maybe a little bit closer to Eddie's perspective of she's not a full-on realist. Because I feel like if you're a person that kind of knows that you are something, but you don't want to be known as that, so you make all this effort to appear not to be that. Like that to me takes like a certain element of like romanticism and stuff, and I feel like that falls more on the Eddie side of the spectrum. If we use Roland and Eddie as a chart, basically, right? Like Roland is just Roland would just be kind of the one that's like, oh, that's who I am, fuck it, whatever, versus like one that's going to try to like concoct all these things in their head to like pretend that they're not, and it does that's what it kind of gives the impression to me. Okay, so she's a little bit closer on that side of things when it comes to who she is as a personality.
Yeah, and the other thing is that she's not just trying to tell herself either. I mean, she's definitely trying to tell the world this too.
Yeah, exactly. But like, yeah, her image, like what she feels about her, how she's perceived. Then it says that she she uses the bus and the subway even though she could have used the car. And then it says, I like this part in parentheses, but she had been self-involved enough to not see Andrew's hurt and deep puzzlement. He liked her and thought it must be some sort of personal rejection. So now that we've already met Andrew here, so it's kind of interesting to see this now as we're kind of flashing through this period of her life that there's a point when she doesn't want to be seen as a limousine liberal, so she starts to kind of take public transportation and stuff like that, and that does hurt Andrew in a personal way because he feels like it's a rejection on him. So I find that kind of interesting. And then the last little bit here says, on the night of August 19th, 1959, she paid for that gesture with half her legs and half of her mind. So that would bring us into the subchapter 6, which is actually one of the sound clips I have. So let's go ahead and listen to that real quick.
6. Odetta had been first tugged, then pulled, and finally caught up in the swell which would eventually turn into a tidal wave. In 1957, when she became involved, the thing which eventually became known as the movement had no name. She knew some of the background and knew the struggle for equality had gone on not since the Emancipation Proclamation, but almost since the first boatload of slaves had been brought to America, to Georgia, in fact, the colony the British founded to get rid of their criminals and debtors. But for Odetta it always seemed to begin in the same place, with the same 3 words. I'm not moving. The place had been a city bus in Montgomery, Alabama, and the words had been spoken by a black woman named Rosa Lee Parks. And the place from which Rosa Lee Parks was not moving was from the front of the city bus to the back of the city bus, which was, of course, the Jim Crow part of the city bus. Much later, Odetta would sing We Shall Not Be Moved with the rest of them, and it always made her think of Rosa Lee Parks, and she never sang it without a sense of shame. It was so easy to sing we with your arms linked to the arms of a whole crowd. That was easy even for a woman with no legs. So easy to sing we, so easy to be we. There had been no we on that bus. That bus must have stank of ancient leather and years of cigar and cigarette smoke. That bus with the curved ad card saying things like Lucky Strike LSMFT and Attend the church of your choice for heaven's sake and Drink Ovaltine, you'll see what we mean, and Chesterfield, 21 great tobaccos make 20 wonderful smokes. No we under the disbelieving gazes of the motormen, the white passengers among whom she sat, the equally disbelieving stares of the blacks at the back. No we, no marching thousands. Only Rosa Lee Parks starting a tidal wave with 3 words. I'm not moving. Odetta would think, if I could do something like that, if I could be that brave, I think I could be happy for the rest of my life. That sort of courage is not in me.
Yeah, so that's again great. The great Frank Muller giving us a little bit there, and I think there's a lot in this section. So she had first been tugged and then finally pulled and finally caught up in the swell that would eventually turn to the tidal wave. Let's see, in 1957, when she'd become involved, the thing that which had eventually become known as the movement had no name. So yeah, then it kind of goes into it, but I love, like, so we kind of see kind of a retelling. Hopefully it's a story that everyone knows, of Rosa Parks, from that era, obviously one of the sparks that kind of ignited things. And, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's anything like, I think that King painting this picture is really interesting for sure. It's a famous moment in history. And, yeah, what I really find interesting though is this tail end, and kind of the theme through the second half of this is the kind of the no we element, and then that Odetta is finding shame in like singing "We Will Not Be Moved," because she sees the hypocrisy a little bit, like it was all kind of launched from Rosa Parks in a lot of ways, helped really light a spark that kind of went on to do a lot, and I think that she realizes that, like, in a lot of ways that she probably doesn't have that I don't know, that bravery is what she calls it.
Well, she says it right there that she doesn't have that courage.
Yeah, and so I find that interesting. And it makes me think back now to Oxford Town and think, are you only going to a place like Oxford Town because you know it's safe? And I'm not like, it's not to like throw aspersions or anything, but it is one of those things that it's like, she's saying that she doesn't have the bravery and stuff. So it's like, is she going down to the South to be part of the movement fully? Or and if she might be, or is it kind of half-assed? Again, is it like the appearances? Is it like not taking the car and taking the bus? Does she want to be seen as part of the movement? And then, because a lot of other people probably are going to realize her, like I guess safety because of like her family, her money, like the companies involved. Like there's going to be a safety to her being on the cover of Time and stuff. I don't know. It's not that I would like question that, she's legit or not, but it's one of those things that when you start to look at like kind of some of the stuff that she's saying and then applying that across the board, it's like, is this kind of who she is as a person as Odetta, right? Is someone that like doesn't want to be seen a certain way, wants to be seen a certain way, and is doing a lot to kind of be in that spot to either be seen or not seen in a specific light. And I find that interesting because again, that's the kind of real shit that real life is about. And so often a character in a book won't have this kind of treatment to have this complexity. Because I mean, we're not even that far into this yet with this character, and already there's a whole hell of a lot of complexity here. And I find it interesting. I really find it interesting. Yeah, and then that last line, of course, if I could do something like that, if I could be that brave, I think I'd be happy for the rest of my life. But that sort of courage is not in me. I feel like that's just a very interesting thing. As you rope in all these things, as you rope in, what she's doing in Oxford Town, some of the circumstances surrounding it, as you rope in some of the, like the stuff that was said in this sound clip, and plus the whole limousine liberal thing. Like it's just a very interesting to me dichotomy that King's building with this character.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, it even also goes into it like here in the next couple of paragraphs where she talks about how she wasn't even interested in Rosa Parks, like it says it in the next paragraph.
Yeah,
she had read the Parks incident and with little interest at first. That came little by little. It was hard to say exactly when or how her imagination had been caught and fired by that at first almost soundless racequake, which had begun to shake the South. So it was just interesting to see, like she's talking about Rosa Parks and how that whole sound clip was dedicated to Rosa Parks and how brave she was, and how Odetta couldn't be that brave, and she's a fake for being with a group and singing, I will not be moved and everything like that. But then it comes down to it that she didn't even care at first.
Yeah.
So it kind of comes back to that where it's like, I mean, it's kind of, what always comes back to me is like, you always hear the stories about, Pearl Harbor gets bombed and there's just lines for men to volunteer.
Yeah.
So just kind of always like, that's the moment. That's the Pearl Harbor right there is that I won't move, and then you have this person who's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I read about it. Yeah, that's kind of newsworthy, but she has no real care for it.
Yeah,
until later.
But
so I think maybe part of that is also part of her shame is that, she wasn't there at the beginning.
Yeah, and it also and some of that does in some ways probably comes from her wealth, right? Chances are, she's never. Especially we'll see a little bit here during the course of this chapter. So I don't think I'm speaking too far ahead, but we'll end up seeing that her parents saw some pretty bad stuff, but pretty much a lot of the wealth that comes from the family happened a little bit before she was born. So chances are she has never seen this stuff because she's kind of been sheltered, and so as part of that, like is almost maybe that's kind of like not like whatever, like where you're saying like that she doesn't. Or in her mind, she maybe doesn't deserve it because she wasn't there from the beginning. But at the same time, like for her, it isn't as real because her dad has gone to great lengths to shield her from it. So I kind of see that as like Odetta, don't trouble yourself that you weren't there from the beginning. Like there's a reason for that. Everyone has different life experiences. Right. It's going to have them react to things differently. So even though she doesn't obviously see that, but I feel like King's done a good job to kind of build in a way to where it's like it's not really your fault. It's not that she was like apathetic. As her nature, it's just she lived a much different life than a lot of the people.
Yeah, she didn't grow up poor, and then her dad became rich. Her dad became rich right when she was right before she was born. So it was around that time. It actually covers that on the next page. If we wanted to jump there real fast, unless is there anything here that you wanted to cover?
Well, I think that like even the next paragraph when it talks about she starts dating a guy that starts to bring her to the village, and it kind of gives you the impression that she starts to kind of get into that. that realm a little bit more of kind of the counterculture, and I think that's kind of what wakes her up. So yeah, I don't know. I just find that interesting that it's almost her kind of going to be a little bit more exposed to different kinds of people that really wakes her up a little bit. But go ahead. What do you got?
Well, it's even like a little bit further down. It even talks about she wasn't even. It says, let me get. There we go. Absurdly or not, it was only then that she had become curious about her own parents and their parents and their parents before them. So that's kind of like it wasn't until after the like you said, the trips to the village and everything like that, hearing all those people's stories, everything. Then she became curious. But skipping ahead a little bit, it was this is her talking about her dad. But when she asked him what life had been like during all the years between, the years where she hadn't been there and the years where she had, her father wouldn't tell her. He would say all sorts of things, but he wouldn't tell her anything. He closed that part of himself off to her. Once her ma, Alice, he called her ma or sometimes Allie, if he had had a few or was feeling good, said, "Tell her about the time those men shot at you when you drove the Ford through the covered bridge, Dan." And he gave Odetta's ma such a gray and forbidding look that her ma, always something of a sparrow, had shrunk back in her seat and said no more. And so, it even goes on further where she tries to pester her mom in private.
Yeah.
And she just won't talk about it. And
yeah.
What you're talking about there is that
he's sheltering
her from that life that they lived and what they had to put up with, because she's not going to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
And she shouldn't be thinking about that. I mean, it's kind of the same thing as, like, I have a daughter. She's 6. I'm not talking to her about what kids are going through in Africa. It's not exactly the same thing here, but it's, kind of the same thing when it comes down to my daughter's never going to have to experience that, being born and raised in America. That's not something that she's ever going to have to go through. So there's no reason troubling her 6-year-old mind with that. I don't know how old Odetta here is when she's asking her mom these questions, and, her mom lets that one time slip and everything.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting to see. That's what you were talking about, where her dad just like closes off that part of their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then it moves a little bit further down here. It says Detta knew things, but Detta didn't know Odetta, and Odetta didn't know Detta, and so the teeth lay as smooth and closed as a Reedon gate there also. So, Detta was a little bit more privy to all this stuff, but they don't really have a way to communicate between the two of them. So that's, that she's not going to gain any kind of like enlightenment or whatever from Detta. So that's... I don't know. I think it's maybe one that we don't necessarily fully need, but it is good to remind ourselves that they don't communicate with each other. Then it goes on and said she had some of her mother's shyness in her as well as her father's unblinking, if unspoken, toughness. And the only time that she had dared pursue him further on the subject to suggest that what he was denying her was a deserved trust fund, never promised, but apparently never to mature, had been one night in his library. He had shaken his Wall Street journals carefully closed, folded it, laid it aside on the table. He removed his rimless steel spectacles and had laid them on top of the paper. Then he had looked at her, a thin black man, thin almost to the point of emaciation, tightly kinked gray hair, now drawing rapidly away from the deepening hollows of his temples, where the tender clock spring of veins pulsed steadily, and he had said only, "I don't want to talk about that part of my life, Odetta, or think about it. It would be pointless. The world has moved on since then." Roland would have understood.
I love that he says that.
Yeah.
That's so fitting.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it is one of those things that, like, there's, I think there's a point with a lot of people where they get to that, where they think that, like, just put something behind you. Like, that's the way for them to get over it. And that could be in any number of ways. That can be, like in this case, it's him kind of closing off, like, the issues that he's had to deal with as a black person living in the South for a portion of, the younger part of his life.
Yeah.
Or, it could be people with trauma, people with, like, whatever it might be. I mean, it could be something even as far down as, like, someone breaking up with someone in a relationship and it being traumatic, and them just, like, closing it off to the point where they almost don't talk about the fact they dated someone for a period of time. I don't know, there's a lot of interesting ways that people go about it, but I find that interesting.
I found the timeline. I forgot, it was before the paragraph that I read before what you just read. It said shortly after moving to New York with his wife and daughter, talking about the process, the cap process that he patented and made them rich, who had been born 4 years after the original patent had been secured. So you can see that they were wealthy when she was born.
Yeah.
So That's the thing, is that she never had to live through any of that. She was never there for any of that. They made sure that she was never a part of that. And so that's what we're talking about, is that her dad does not want her to have any knowledge of that or anything like that. And that's what she's holding against herself, is that, yeah, she never had to grow up, worried about, being black and having someone, take her for being black and just punishing her for being black and doing horrible things to her just for being black, or saying mean things to her or anything like that.
Yeah.
She never had to worry about that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's why she feels guilty.
Yeah, totally. So now we're moving to subchapter 7, and I actually have another sound clip for us. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
7. When Roland opened the door with the words "The Lady of the Shadows" written upon it, he saw things he did not understand at all, but he understood they didn't matter. It was Eddie Dean's world, but beyond that it was only a confusion of lights, people, and objects. More objects than he had ever seen in his life. Lady things, from the look of them, and apparently for sale. Some under glass, some arranged in tempting piles and displays. None of it mattered any more than the movement, as that world flowed past the edges of the doorway before them. The doorway was the lady's eyes. He was looking through them just as he had looked through Eddie's eyes when Eddie had moved up the aisle of the sky carriage. Eddie, on the other hand, was thunderstruck. The revolver in his hand trembled and dropped a little. The gunslinger could have taken it from him easily, but did not. He only stood quietly. It was a trick he had learned a long time ago. Now the view through the doorway made one of those turns the gunslinger found so dizzying, but Eddie found this same abrupt swoop oddly comforting. Roland had never seen a movie. Eddie had seen thousands, and what he was looking at was like one of those moving point-of-view shots they did in ones like Halloween and The Shining. He even knew what they called the gadget they did it with, Steadicam. That was it. Star Wars, too, he muttered. Death Star. That fucking crack, remember? Roland looked at him and said nothing. Hands, dark brown hands, entered what Roland saw as a doorway, and what Eddie was already starting to think of as some sort of magic movie screen. A movie screen which, under the right circumstances, you might be able to walk into, the way that guy had just walked out of the screen and into the real world in the Purple Rose of Cairo. Bitchin' movie. Eddie hadn't realized how bitchin' until just now.
Yeah, so that's I don't know. I love this element of the second book here. We saw it in the first bit with Eddie, and now we're kind of seeing it again. Just the idea of like how this works, this interdimensional crossing. And basically just a movie screen, and they're obviously seeing it like a Steadicam shot because she's in a wheelchair. In fact, I know that like for instance, like in Better Call Saul, he has like the film people that help him, and they use a wheelchair to replicate a Steadicam.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, so like one guy sits in it and kind of like braces himself with the camera, and then they just move the wheelchair, because it's not a $10,000 Steadicam device, they can just get a wheelchair. So I just like, it's really an apt description here with King to use that, because it would be strange, a strange movement and motion, and especially Roland's never seen a movie, it'd be really odd. Like whereas like with Eddie, it was very motionless at first. He's just sitting and like he's seeing the airplane and stuff, but with this one now suddenly he's seeing this move around and stuff, so it's probably something else for him. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else in there. So we're either way with the subchapter jump, we're jumping back to Roland and Eddie, obviously, with what we've seen here, and just kind of a cool breakdown with what they're seeing a little bit and stuff. What do you have next?
The next part was just after the sound clip, actually. It's older, he muttered. That's Eddie muttering. Before your when, the gunslinger said. Eddie looked at him and laughed shortly. Yeah, if you want to put it that way. Yeah. And then right here we get a little bit of a taste of who we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And it's obviously Detta. It says, "Hello, Miss Walker," a tentative voice said. The view in the doorway rose so suddenly that even Eddie was a bit dizzied, and he saw a saleswoman who obviously knew the owner of the black hands. knew her and didn't like her, or feared her, or both. Help you today? This one. The owner of the black hands held up a white scarf with a bright blue edge. We've heard that before.
Yeah.
Don't bother to wrap it up, babe. Just stick it in a bag. Cash or cash? It's always cash, isn't it? Yes, that's fine, Miss Walker. I'm so glad you approve, dear. There was a little grimace on the sales girl's face. Eddie just caught it as she turned away. Maybe it was something as simple as being talked to that way by a woman the sales girl considered an uppity. Am I allowed to say that? I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that on the podcast. I don't want to get us in trouble. I mean, I really honestly don't know. I'm asking.
I don't know.
I'm going to skip it just because I do not want to get us in trouble in any way. It's definitely like the most taboo word out there. So
yeah, indeed, and rightfully so.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. And so like we see here that we got a bitch on our hands basically. She's being an asshole.
She's very abrasive.
Yeah.
Very abrasive, and just I think I like the idea that like it isn't like it's unclear to them whether this lady doesn't like who they're looking through eyes wise, or whether this girl fears her. And I feel like that's a very a telling thing. Like it's either hate or fear, and potentially both. Like I find that interesting, probably gives us a little bit of a hint of who we're dealing with overall, right?
Mm-hmm. Kind of gives you an idea of what Roland might be stepping into.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, next up, let's see. Then I guess with Eddie here, he's kind of piecing together. I like that it says that, again, it was more his experience in the movie theater than any knowledge of history or even life on the streets as he had lived it that caused this thought, which is what you just read. So kind of giving the idea again that Eddie's not like this history person that would like no. he's kind of piecing it together kind of like we did, like what era are we in and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think he's piecing it together, but it's not because he understands history, but it's because he's seen enough movies. Talks about some of the movies as well. So, and then it says Roland's Lady of Shadows was black or white, one rude bitch. So yeah, that's certainly an apt figuring with what he's seen, what they've seen so far. And then this next paragraph says, and it didn't really matter, did it? None of it made any damn difference. He cared about one thing and one thing only, and that was getting the fuck out. That was New York. He could almost smell New York. And that means New York, and New York meant smack. He could almost smell that too. Except there was one hitch, wasn't there? One big motherfucking hitch. So that's the end of subchapter 7. As we're kind of there, I guess in this point, this whole subchapter, I guess we're in Eddie's mind, right?
A little bit, yeah.
So yeah, because King has kind of been keeping it mostly straight to where we kind of stay in the mind of one character for a subchapter.
Yep.
So yeah, it looks like now it's kind of revealing. At first we thought it could be either of them, but now we're seeing that it's clearly Eddie that we're involved in here. Then we move to subchapter 8, and then we jump over to Roland. And does Roland watch Eddie carefully and thought he could have killed him 6 times over, and almost at any time he wanted. He had elected to remain still and silent and let Eddie work the situation out for himself. Eddie was a lot of things, and a lot of them were not nice. As a fellow who had consciously let a child drop to his death, the gunslinger knew the difference between nice and not quite well. But one thing Eddie wasn't was stupid. He was a smart kid. He would figure it out, and so he did. And does this, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a parent, nor have I ever been even in a proximity of that fact. But isn't that the same thing with kids, where you kind of just, like, you don't really tell them things in some cases. You let them just kind of work shit out, and you let them learn things on their own way, whereas you're just sitting there going, come on, you stupid thing. Like, this, that, you're supposed to do this, or, whatever. But, you don't like, I don't know, like, they tell you that that can stunt, like, some development issues if you're just constantly telling them everying, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you got to let them learn.
Yeah, it comes down to, like, my daughter does it really bad. She comes out and she's like, hey, this doll needs its dress put back on. And I'm like, okay, try. Do it. Give it the old college try, and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So that's where I come from. Is I'm the same frame of mind as you. Is like, don't do everything for them, otherwise they're always going to expect someone to do something for them.
Yeah.
They need to learn how to do things. So
but I don't even think that's like that's not even a philosophy. Isn't that just like basic that everyone should understand that, like, you got to let your kids somewhat like
it should be
like, yeah, like, cause like ultimately I think that's even part of like, I mean, schools do the same thing, right? Like, teachers aren't going to give everything to you and stuff. Like, cause I feel like that's just kind of a basic thing that, like, of growth and development is that, let's see. Looks like...
Have we not been streaming this entire time?
It shows live on my side. On both of my things show really fine. Yeah, counter's going fine. It's showing green here. The program, which is a separate thing, is showing green. Yeah, what's yours look like?
It shows good.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I may have to hit refresh on it. I guess I can do it in the chat if you see if you can't hear us. You want to tell them to hit refresh? Yeah, I don't know. I guess like, what do I know? Again, I'm not a parent, so I'm not going to pretend to be. I don't play one on TV, so no, I just feel like that's like a basic thing. Like, and it's like, because that even goes into like animals and stuff, right? Like, there's certain animals, like especially ones that hatch from eggs and stuff. Like, I've always heard that like you can't like help an animal that's hatching from an egg. Like they're supposed to just kind of hatch through it on their own. And if they, because like if you help them, it'll like kind of stunt their development and stuff. So
Right.
I just feel like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe I just stepped myself into some controversial nonsense there, but no, I just thought it was always a basic thing that you got to let people, and it's same with like adults too, right? If people are learning stuff, you don't always like think about in school how often, I guess you're not an adult, but think about high school or college, like, does your teacher always give you the answer when you ask a question, or do they kind of work you through?
Sorry. We have an update. It was his network is having an issue, not ours.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. I was about to say, yeah, we hasn't seen any issues on this side. Yeah, so that I just think it's in general just kind of a basic thing of growth and learning and stuff to kind of let people, or maybe like, and I've done it to you a number of times, like, when we work together and stuff, it's like, you ask for something and like sometimes I'll just return your question with a series of questions that you then
should have asked myself.
And like in my experiences, that's always led to the spot where eventually I'm not hearing those questions from you or anyone else, right?
Yeah.
And that's not because I don't want the questions, but that's because it's enabling people to kind of get better. And I think that maybe in a way Roland's doing that here, which is interesting because that is a different dichotomy of their relationship, right? Than we have seen thus far. It's been a little bit more contentious. So for him to kind of almost have a teacherly idea about him maybe gives us a hint that he's a little bit more open to kind of teaching Eddie things. So, what do you got next?
The next sentence, actually the next part here. Eddie says to him after spinning the gun, very showy like, "This thing might as well be a piece of shit for all the good it can do me. Isn't that right?" And then Roland thinks to himself, "You can talk bright when you want to," Roland thought. "Why do you so often choose to talk stupid, Eddie? Is it because you think that's the way they talked in the place where your brother went with the guns? Isn't that right?" Eddie repeated. Roland nodded. "If I had plugged you, what would have happened to that door?" "I don't know. I suppose the only way would be to try it and see." "What do you think would happen?" "I think it would disappear." So now we see why Roland knew that Eddie wasn't going to shoot him.
Yeah. And I think that like
just took Eddie a second.
in my mind, I thought the same thing, right? If Roland were I mean, and that was like even the previous, when we were going through the shuffle chapter, like it's the same thing. If Roland dies, Eddie's fucked. Like in my mind, I kind of just like took that as just a matter of course that like, yeah, if Roland died, Eddie might find two other doors, but they're not going to fucking open to anything. To me, that just seemed obvious, and maybe it's good for King to do, like, to say this just in case there's people that didn't connect that dot. But for me, yeah, it just felt like that Roland was kind of the key in some ways to kind of having this crossover. So if nothing else, maybe at least it solidified in my mind, okay, yeah, cool, I was thinking the right thing. Like if Roland dies, these doors don't exist anymore.
Right.
And whether, in my view, though, I guess I wouldn't even necessarily see them disappearing, but I would see them not working anymore. Like what happened to Eddie's door after it closed, right?
It couldn't reopen.
It became just a piece of wood on the beach, basically. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's probably what would happen if Roland died. Like I don't know that the door would completely disappear like they're saying here, but it certainly would no longer be a doorway to 1960s New York City. So, let's see. And then Eddie goes on and kind of uses the idea of like a movie projector. And then Eddie says Eddie wanted his money worth. "You can go through yourself," Eddie said slowly. "Yes, sort of. Yes. You wind up in her head like you wound up in mine. Yes. So you could hitchhike into my world, but that's all." Roland said nothing. Hitchhike was one of the words Eddie sometimes used, and he didn't exactly understand, but caught the drift. But you couldn't go through in your body, or you could go through in your body like in Balazar's. He was talking out loud, but really talking to himself. "Except you'd need me for that, wouldn't you?" "Yes." Then take me with you." Now, with that, I don't know that I fully understand the mechanics of that. Like, why is it that he needs Eddie for his body to go through? Couldn't he go through with Odetta in some way to physically manifest if he wanted to. I guess I've never understood that element of like mechanically. Again, I'm a nerd, so I dig this kind of stuff. But like, I've never understood why would he need Eddie to go through physically.
I don't know if it's because Eddie's the one that figured out how they could go through. Because back when they were at the airplane, Eddie's the one that turned to the door. So I don't know if it's just something that Eddie has the power to do, where he goes through and then can come back.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Or it also, I guess the other thing, I guess piecing it together in my head just now as we're talking about this, it also could be you have to work with the person to do it, and they're not in any way to know that Data in this case is going to work with them. So for if they did want to just both, if Roland wanted to appear, he would need to use Eddie, because Eddie is kind of that key to the other world. That Data could be that key, but she would have to work with him, and I don't
she'd
think
have to turn around and willingly let Roland come through with her, and that's where Roland has to give up control of her. She has to do that voluntarily, kind of like that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. So you I guess it could be a way that like theoretically, like and Eddie kind of jokingly talks about it here. So theoretically, those two can go through, and they would literally just appear right there in the middle of Macy's,
right?
Whereas,
and that's what Eddie talks about, causing a riot if they did it right then.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I guess I get that now. That he would use Eddie as a key to get through, because he can't really count on knowing if Data is going to work with him or not.
Yeah, it's like, is Odetta going to say yes?
Yeah, and be willing, or is it going to be a struggle? So I guess that makes sense. I guess I've never just put the thought into it to like fully work out exactly what this meant. I just kept reading personally, but and I usually do. So, and then Eddie goes on, "Not right now. We'll cause a riot. I'll come back with you." Eddie said, "I swear, Roland. I mean, I know you got a job to do, and I know I'm part of it, and I know you saved my ass at customs, but I think I saved yours at Balazar's. Now, what do you think?" "I think you did," Roland said. He remembered the way that Eddie had risen up from behind the desk, regardless of the risk, and felt an instant of doubt. And then they kind of go on here, arguing a little bit. Roland says no. And the next note I had was kind of a little bit into this, into a few paragraphs down. It says, that movement up the aisle, the lady, whoever she was, wasn't moving the way an ordinary person moved. Wasn't moving, for instance, the way Eddie had moved when Roland looked through his eyes, or now to stop to think of it, which he never had before, any more than he'd ever stopped to really notice the constant presence of his own nose in the lower range of his peripheral vision, the way that he moved himself. And that's
every time I hear that line, I look down at my nose.
Yeah, me too. It's like one of those stupid things on the internet where it's like, oh, it's impossible to lick your elbow, and it's like, how many people read that and then try to lick their elbow? When one walked, vision became a mild pendulum, left leg, right leg, right leg, the world rocking back and forth so mildly and gently that after a while, shortly after you began to walk, he supposed, you simply ignored it. And you know what? That is something I never thought about. I wonder if that's why babies, I mean, I know babies don't have their knees fully like developed and stuff, so they, whatever, but I wonder in some cases as they start to walk, I wonder if that's why they are so clumsy, because they haven't fully got to that realm of like just going with the flow of the fact that you're kind of pendulum motion, right? Maybe that's why they're like drunk. Like they always say with babies, they're like drunk suicidal people, and your job as a parent is to stop them from killing themselves or harming themselves. But like, yeah, it's just something that like, kind of a eureka moment whenever I hit that, where I'm just like, oh yeah, maybe that is why babies are, I mean, again, I know their knees aren't fully developed, that's part of it, that's why they walk so weird, but it's like, is there potentially a reason that's why they have a hard time with balance at first too, is that
they don't understand that they got to go lean to the right, lean to the left, that pendulum like you're talking about. They just try to walk without that.
Yeah, like as a human, you kind of evolve past like realizing that you kind of have that pendulum, and your mind just kind of accounts for it. But maybe as babies, they don't have that their mind accounting for it yet. So like for them, it's just like whoa. Like I guess like when you get on a ship, right? Yeah. And like suddenly like the movement's it's, way heavier, and everyone starts to get disoriented and can't like. You got
to get your sea legs is what they call it. Right?
Yeah. So maybe it's like a version of that for kids. I don't know. I found that at least slightly funny. And then it says there was none of that pendulum movement in the lady's walk. She simply moved smoothly up the aisle as if riding along tracks. Ironically, Eddie had the same perception, only to Eddie it had looked like a Steadicam shot. He had found this perception comforting because it was familiar. To Roland, it was alien. But then Eddie broke in, his voice shrill. Well, why not? Just why the fuck not? Just because, and then Roland answers, because you don't want chicken. The gunslinger said, "I know what you call the. Let's see. I know what you call the thing you want, Eddie. You want to fix, you want to score. So what? Eddie cried. Almost shrieked. So what if I do? I said I'd come back with you. You got my promise. I mean, you got my fucking promise. What else do you want? You want me to swear on my mother's name? Okay, I swear on my mother's name. You want me to swear on my brother Henry's name? All right, I swear, I swear, I swear. And then I love this line here. Enrico Balazar would have told him, but the gunslinger didn't need the likes of Balazar to tell him the one fact in life: never trust a junkie. I love that because like it's just a great connection to like Breaking Bad. Like that's a theme throughout the first portion of that show. Like you always get that line: never trust a junkie or drug addict. And yeah, but no, I mean, and really though, again, I think there's a lot of where like the roots of like I'm certainly not liking Eddie at this point as a reader, like just because like I don't know, like it seems so selfish in a lot of ways that it's like you just want to go back to like you've already gone through the withdrawals and stuff, right, through the shuffle chapter, like, and you really just want to dive back in to that. Like it just seems weird to me, and I know I've never had like that kind of issue with addiction, so I'm not like judging in any way, but it is one of those things where it was just very I don't know, off-putting to me. I don't know. What do you think?
It's definitely an come on, man.
Yeah.
Like especially for me with being such an Eddie fan, even like from the start and everything like that. The way he talks, his smart ass, his sense of humor and everything like that, I've always, been drawn to him. And he's a lot like me. It's like, dude, come on. Like, come on. Like, Eddie, no, really. Come on.
Yeah, come on,
come
man.
on. Like, just stop. That was a big part here, was just like, I understand the tough love, Roland. Still a bastard, but I get it. Put it to him.
Yeah.
Give it to him. Set him right,
Yeah, indeed. Then it says, Roland nodded toward the door. Until after the tower, at least that part of your life is done. After that, I don't care. After that, you're free to go to hell in your own way. Until then, I need you. Oh, you fucking shit-ass liar, Eddie said softly. That there was no more audible emotion in his voice, but the gunslinger saw a glistening tear in his eye. Roland said nothing. You know there ain't going to be no after. Not for me, not for her, or whoever the Christ the third guy is. Probably not for you either. You look as fucking wasted as Henry did at his worst. If you don't die on the way to your tower, we'll sure as shit die when we get there. So why are you lying to me? And I think that that's I think that's an interesting and an apt stab back, I guess. If you're going to kind of go in that realm of like kind of judging Eddie, like that is the spot where you're like, even me as a Roland fan, I'm like, yeah, like Eddie's right there. Like, yeah, there is no, and I think I'm perceiving the same thing. It's just like, there's something about this that doesn't feel like it's, not that I was bringing anything Lord of the Rings wise, but it's like Lord of the Rings. Like that is, at some point you realized in that story, this is the end for Frodo.
It's a one-way ticket.
Yeah. Whether he survives or not, this is going to fuck him in a way that's not going to be able to be undone. And I just feel like there was some element of it, especially just the finality of coming through into this world that like, yeah, this isn't going to end in a way that Eddie's just going to be able to walk back through some magic door after the tower. Like it just, even in this early stage, not really knowing anything about the tower or whatever, there was just part of me that was just like, yeah, Eddie's completely right here. And in that, Roland's kind of a prick for, pretending that there was any after. I don't know. What do you think?
No, yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And then definitely Eddie calls him on his bullshit. And this is the part here where, I was going back and forth like, come on, Eddie, don't be an asshole. But then right there, I'm like, dude, he's got a point. Like,
yeah,
from what we've seen already with the gunslinger, he shot Allie, no problem, no hesitation. And then he let Jake die for his fucking tower. So it's like,
yeah,
God, no wonder Eddie's calling him on his bullshit.
Yeah. Has he even told that story to Eddie yet, though? I'm trying to remember if
I think he does during the walk.
Okay. And then in the chat here, yeah, mentioning the Shining Steadicam. Now I'm blanking. Is the Steadicam with him on his bike?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Like
when you see the twins,
like with Halloween, I'm like, yeah, I know instantly what it is, like the Steadicam.
Yeah.
But I like with the Shining, I'm like, is it the kid on the bike? Because if it's not, I'm missing what shot it is. But yeah, it is that scene. Okay, which is a great scene. And also, we got Stephen King referencing Stephen King, right?
Which is
in some ways,
which is interesting to think about.
Yeah, it is, but it really is. We skipped over it when we were talking about that back there. But it is something that we do have to think about. Is like, wait a minute, Stephen King did just reference a Stephen King movie in a Stephen King book, and I'm not sure. Have we seen that before? Like, I'm not sure that like. Because I think so much of his books are in universe in a way, right? Like it seems to me that like I don't know, like It. I feel like the Overlook exists in the same universe for It. So it's like I don't see that like It is going to be in a spot where like they're going to talk about seeing this Jack Nicholson movie, The Shining. That just doesn't jive for me.
It's
so
we talked about this the last time we recorded was we think I think I may have found a connection to Mr. Mercedes to The Shining.
Yeah.
And I completely forgot about this one here because that puts The Shining in Eddie's world. Which puts,
as a movie, though,
which puts Stephen King in Eddie's world.
Yeah, so that's a weird like Inception shit a little bit, but it is something that it is something I remember. It jumped out at me the very first time I read it because I was just like, wait, he just mentioned a Stephen King movie. Like, yeah, it's perplexing because it's like you wouldn't think you would do that in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's oddball. So yeah, thanks for bringing that. I'm trying to remember. Agamorphe, is that Chris from Chicago? I'm forgetting from last time.
I think that's what it was. I'm pretty sure it was Chris. Let us know.
If so, if not, I'm sorry. My memory is horrible. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast yesterday. He
called me Tom when I walked in today. He's like, "Oh, hey, what's up, Tom?" I'm like, "Dude, it's Peter." He's like, "Oh yeah,
yeah,
right.
the dude I'm friends with for 20 years."
Yeah, right.
So
right,
let alone remembering something from 2 weeks ago. I'm really bad at that kind of like stuff, remembering things.
What'd you have for breakfast, man?
What, today?
Yeah,
I didn't have breakfast, so that's easy.
What'd you have for dinner last night?
I don't know. I really don't.
You really don't remember what you had for dinner last night?
I don't remember.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a problem because of TV. I don't remember what happened 5 minutes ago. What are we all laughing at?
Right, blame the TV.
No, it's a Simpsons reference.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
God, I can't wait for your new show when you talk about the Simpsons.
I don't know how I'm going to do it because it's such a huge thing, but yeah, no, I had to throw that out there. Again, we're talking about The Shining. How does that not get to the Simpsons fairly quickly, right?
Don't you mean The Shining?
You want to get sued? All right. Going on here, it says, yeah, Eddie said, well, I got some news for you, Roland. I know what's going to happen to your real body when you go through here and inside of her. I know because I saw it before, and I don't need your guns. I got you by that fabled place where the short hairs grow, my friend. You can even turn her head the way you turn mine and watch what I do to the rest of you while you're nothing but your goddamn caw. I'd like to wait until the nightfall and drag you down by the water. Then you could watch the lobsters chow up the rest of you, but you might be in too much of a hurry for that. So, and see, again, here, this is just a spot where I'm just like, Eddie isn't gaining any favors in my book here. I just, again, because like, I'm not necessarily saying I'm right, but I was fully on Roland's, on the Roland train for support wise. So this threat stuff was like really pissing me off. Like,
well, I mean,
reading it the first time, especially,
the big thing here was I was trying to see things from both sides, and it was really hard for me to see where Eddie was coming from the longest time. But then it's like, goddamn, dude, like, kind of get where he's coming from. Like, this guy is just like, all right, you're coming with me. Here, let's go to this whole new world.
Yeah.
Here's a taste of what you had.
Yeah.
And fuck you, you can't have anything.
There is an element of like, there was never any choice for Eddie, really. Like, he does kind of get pulled into this, like, very unwillingly.
Steve from Chicago.
Steve. Yeah. I knew Chris didn't sound right. But we have so many Chris's that it's probably the best way to hedge my bets is to say Chris for every
It definitely has the highest percentage of being right. That's for sure. You got the city right, though.
Steve,
so
I do
that's
apologize.
impressive.
Yeah, I do remember that. But yeah, no, I guess that would be my thing to maybe defend Eddie. Is that he is not here because he ever had there was not a point where Roland was like, come with me, like we got like.
Well, there really kind of was in Balazar, but I mean, like, it was kind of.
But it
was like still a shitty way to do it. Like, go ahead, stay here and explain this to the cops.
To the SWAT team that's like knocking the windows in right now.
Like throwing tear gas in.
To me, I don't think that's even really that much of a choice. Again, it's one of those things like, do you want to sit here and go up for a multiple homicide and, this drug, like everything?
Yeah,
like
come with me to this other world or I'll leave you in the ocean to drown. Take your pick.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like fuck you.
so in a lot of ways, I guess that would be my defense.
God.
If I had to make one for Eddie, is that he's kind of in this in a way that doesn't really give him a lot of choice. So
imagine that. Imagine Eddie's shit-covered life if Roland had left him. Dude was just suspected at JFK of bringing in cocaine.
Yeah.
And then he's in a room.
A massacre.
Multiple homicides.
Yeah.
A shootout. I mean, he wouldn't have one of the guns that killed him. He would just be there.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that would not look good.
No.
On a
but,
resume.
But at the same time, right? Like the only reason he didn't go into a nice small padded room after JFK was because of Roland helping him. So really, it would have been
right.
One hand wash the other. You go to prison just for a different role, right?
But I've already thought of this. But would Eddie have even been caught if it wasn't for Roland?
I think so.
No. What was the one thing that the stewardess noticed about him? The fucking eyes changing color.
But
no.
I don't know.
No. Think about it. Think about it for a second. The eye color is what got her thinking about him. That's what brought the other stewardess, the more veteran one, onto it, because she thought he had a gun. The other veteran one saw him bend over and saw the cocaine bags under his arms. No matter how good the shirt was made, she saw them. If you don't have the eye color change, you don't have the special request for a tuna fish sandwich, and you don't have her being like all pissed off that he went back to sleep and all that shit, would he have been caught?
Here's the thing. We don't know the full story because we don't know what customs was actually going to look like. We don't know if they would have had dogs or whatever. Either way, it's a harebrained idea to send a dude on an airplane with a bunch of coke taped to him.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things that, like, I don't know. And then, he's on the fast track to either the end of a life or the end of any meaningful life, going to prison, dealing with Balazar, whether it's that trip or some other one, because like if that one's successful, guess what's going to happen next month? He's going to do it again.
He's going to need another one because he's going to be out of heroin.
Yeah, Balazar is just going to keep rolling the dice on him. So yeah, either way, I don't know. It's an interesting dichotomy though. Yeah, he definitely didn't really have much any meaningful choice in where he's at. So I guess I can somewhat see his side a little bit, but yeah. With this though, it's pretty much all about the drugs that he wants to use. So like, yeah, it's hard to get behind him for sure. What do you got next?
Right here, Roland says, and close the door forever. Eddie says, you say that part of my life is done. You don't just mean smack either. You mean New York, America, my time, everything. If that's how it was, I want this part done too. The scenery sucks and the company stinks. There are times, Roland, when you make Jimmy Swaggart?
Yeah, Swaggart.
Swaggart look almost sane. Now, this was the part that I was thinking had already happened. There are great wonders ahead, Roland said. Great adventures. More than that, there is a quest to course upon, and a chance to redeem your honor. There's something else, too. You could be a gunslinger. I need to be the last after all. It's in you, Eddie. I see it. I feel it. Eddie laughed through the tears coursing down his cheeks. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Just what I need. My brother, Henry. He was a gunslinger. In a place called Vietnam, that was. Is there a space between Vietnam and yours?
Yeah, for Vietnam.
Vietnam? Oh, okay. Vietnam. That's okay. It was great for him. You should have been there when he was on a serious nod, Roland. He couldn't find his way out to the fucking bathroom without help. If there wasn't any help handy, he just sat there and watched big-time wrestling and did it in his fucking pants. It's great to be a gunslinger. I can see that. My brother was a doper, and you're out of your fucking gourd.
Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps your brother was a man with no clear idea of honor. Maybe not. We didn't always get a real clear picture of what that was in the projects. It was just a word that you used after your, if you happen to get caught smoking reefer on lifting the spinners off some guy's T-bird and who got hoed up in court for it. Hoed up in court.
Yeah. Now, you kind of alluded to this a tiny bit, but you also mentioned the whole bare-chested women, because that was in
Balazar's office.
That was I don't know. Yeah, it was somewhere in there.
I think it was.
Yeah, I think that was like one of the last things. So you just kind of merged the two things together. But that was kind of the sales pitch. And now here you're kind of seeing the secondary sales pitch, maybe trying to fight against the buyer's remorse period now, as Eddie's realizing that he's basically in a spot where, like, I don't know, there's really no good end to this, and it's not necessarily a place you're going to be selling timeshares at necessarily. Like, if you had an infinite door, I don't think there's a lot of people that want to go set up shop on these beaches with these lobstrosities. Yeah,
that a chick?
Yeah, I just don't think it is. So yeah. I could see where he's coming from, like in terms of like especially with that portion, that kind of like burst from Eddie. When he says, you said that part of my life is done, you don't just mean smack either. You mean New York, America, my time, my everything. So like that to me is like where I'm like, okay, like it's like ping ponging back and forth for me as I'm reading this, because it's like, okay, now I can kind of see what you mean. Yeah, it is. It's unfair. Like, if the roles were reversed, and who knows what the journey would be, but like if Roland had to forsake his world for ours, how easy or hard would he be at doing that. You
well,
know?
imagine if Eddie pulled him through and said, "Okay, you have to forsake the tower."
Yeah, and like maybe let's say the stand was going on, and it's like, okay, we got this guy in Vegas. I need your help to go and defeat him. Like,
Yeah.
is Roland going to do
Give
that?
a shit?
You
Is he
know?
even going to give a shit?
I mean, and let's just remove even the tower, and let's just say he lived a normal life as a gunslinger. Like, is he going to give that up to go into a completely different world that he doesn't understand? To help in some of their journey. I don't know. That's a really fair question because I don't know that he would. Because it's a lot to ask of anyone, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I could keep ping pong back and forth whether it's like fuck you, Eddie, or okay, I see where you're coming from, Eddie. That's me
Well,
back and forth. There.
what this always comes down to is my biggest problem with characters in film, TV, and written literature as well is I side with them. I understand them wholeheartedly, agree with them, but I hate the way they fucking go about it.
Yeah.
Like, stop being such a dick, Roland. Like, a little compassion here would have gone a long way.
Yeah.
And that's where I get pissed off at Roland. Is like, dude, you have the solution. You have the key in your pocket to unlock this fucking lock between you and your buddy here. That's supposed to be like your partner, basically, is how you're talking it up about him being a gunslinger and shit like that.
Yeah.
And instead, you just treat him like shit, which is where I really got off on the wrong foot with Roland when I first started the series. And I struggled a lot because it's like I don't like this character a lot because he's an asshole.
Yeah. And
It's
me,
really-
I'm like, I've never even considered that.
No, yeah.
From my perspective, being more in line with like Roland, where I'm just like,
Yeah.
I've never considered the fact of like being a like more emotional support. Like then it never even entered my mind. So again, it's a difference between you and I too, where I'm just
how
like,
much would
I've never
how much
considered
would it have changed right here if Roland had said, "Look, okay, Smack's just obviously bad for you. Like, we're not going to get you a fix, but all right, I'll tell you what. I'll take her and I'll go buy you some chicken.
yeah,
That sounds good. We'll make a compromise. Let's do that." How much would this be different with Eddie?
yeah, it's
But then when I come back to it from Roland's side of things, and that's where it comes back with like what you're saying, seeing things from both sides. We already talked about sometimes the kids just got to learn.
yeah, exactly.
And that's where I think that Roland is that tough love moment. And it's hard for tough love. As a parent, trust me, it's hard for tough love.
Yeah,
You hate to see your kid fail and
Yeah.
everything. So I think that's where Roland's a stronger man than I am. Because I can tell you right now, I would have compromised with Eddie.
Now here's the thing. I can't give Roland credit for this knowledge, but let's just say that he even let Eddie go and get a fix. What would that mean for Eddie long term? He already went through the, like withdrawals and stuff.
He's going to have to go through them again.
He'd go through them again, most likely, yeah. Like,
Not as bad because
he
it would be
wouldn't-
like one fix. I mean, let's be honest. After years of doing it with Henry, that was a pretty bad.
well, heroin's a pretty virulent
It is.
drug. Like that's, I mean, easily like him going back to it even once could even kill him. But like it does come down to a fact too, where if he does, let's just say he even got himself enough to to fix for a couple weeks or whatever. Like these doors are finite. Like we know there's at least one more after this. Like it's a short term thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like I don't know. It's like if you're stranded on a desert island and you're given one thing, you're like, well, I want a freaking number 7 from McDonald's or whatever the fuck you say. Like, well,
Great.
okay, that'll help you for one meal, but long term,
Yeah.
like, what's it gonna do for you?
It's like
So-
it's the struggle when you're like dieting, like every time you go to the grocery store it's going to be, but instead of it being every time you go to the grocery store, it's only a couple times that you have to go, because then you train yourself not to walk past those chips aisles and the cookie aisles and stuff like that. Those are just the aisles that you ignore. For Eddie though, it's like more permanent. Like you said, there's only 3 doors and this is number 2.
Yeah,
So-
exactly. And I love this next little bit here. It says Eddie was crying harder now, but he was laughing too. Your friends now. This guy you talk about in your sleep, for instance, this dude Cuthbert. And it says the gunslinger started in spite of himself. Not all his long years of training could have stayed that start. Did they get the stuff you're talking about, like a goddamn Marine recruitment sergeant, adventure, quest, honor? They understood honor, yes, Roland said, slowly thinking of all the vanished others. Did it get them any further than gunslinging got my brother? The gunslinger said nothing. I know you, Eddie said. I've seen a lot of guys like you. You're just another kook singing onward Christian soldier with a flag in one hand and a gun in the other. I don't want no honor. I just want a chicken dinner and a fix, in that order. So I'm telling you, go on through, you can, but the minute you're gone, I'm going to kill the rest of you. The gunslinger said nothing. And yeah, I just find that interesting because again, it's this
Calls him on his shit.
Yeah, it's this back and forth. It's a spot where it's just like, and I think that like that's an apt thing for Eddie to bring up with like Cuthbert, which is interesting that Roland's talking in his sleep. But it's an apt thing to bring up because maybe from Roland's perspective, he's never considered those around him, right?
Yeah.
We've only seen a little bit of it here. We've seen some allusions to Cuthbert. We know that he died in the past. We've seen Jake. So far the track record we have here is the people that were with Roland
are no longer with him.
Generally don't last. Yeah. So it's one of these things that like for Eddie to bring that up, like maybe it brings Roland's mind to where it's like, hey, you're always thinking this from your perspective. What about fucking me now that's going to be coming in like this boy Cuthbert did that you talk in your sleep about? Like, and maybe that helps Roland connect to the fact like, okay, yeah, no, I'm maybe on some kind of like journey that I'm destined for, whatever it may be, but the people around me, tend to be fucked over and killed or whatever. Horrible things happen to them.
Yeah.
Maybe it can bring him to a spot where he can understand that where Eddie's coming from is it's like, I'm not in the leading role here. I'm probably in a role that's going to end up getting me fucked over. So, to bring up Cuthbert's an interesting thing, in my opinion, just from that perspective. From what little we know of this character right now, we can pretty much already tell that it's maybe not best to be aligned with him overall. So it's interesting for Eddie to bring that up, in my opinion. I don't know. I find that kind of cool. And also revelation there that Roland talks in his sleep.
I think we had that before.
We had him like murmuring and stuff during like when he's like kind of going through the whole shuffle thing. But if we got the sense that while he's actually just sleeping, that he's talking and having like, talking about fallen friends and stuff.
Maybe not. And it honestly kind of surprises me, your take on this. I honestly expected, especially the couple times that I've read it through since we started this book with the book clubs, I honestly expected this to be one of the points where you would be like, look, yeah, see, this is where Eddie has a wrong assessment of Roland. Like Eddie doesn't have the full story of Cuthbert. And I kind of took Roland's side here. And it's just like, well, dude, you don't know what happened.
Well, no, he doesn't, but it's one that he obviously knows that Roland cares about because he's talking about it. So to bring it up and say,
right,
ask him the questions, like, all the shit you're promising me, did that come to Cuthbert, the one you keep fucking murmuring about in your sleep?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's an apt thing. Cause
it's just interesting to me because, like, I'm more side with Roland there because, like, Roland's like, yeah, he understood honor. And he's like, yeah, and basically, this is how I boil this conversation down. It's like, all the guys that were with you before, and especially this one Cuthbert, did they understand honor? And Roland's like, yeah, they didn't. And he's like, yeah, well, how fucking far did it get him?
Yeah.
And that's where I think that's more of a low blow on Eddie's part because it's like, dude, that's not Roland's fault. That's how I always took it. It's
okay,
like, it's not Roland's fault. Like, dude, fuck you. Like, it's not your fault if your brother goes off and does something stupid and everything like that. And that's where I think Eddie, after all the shit that he went through with Henry, he blames Roland for what happened to Cuthbert. He doesn't know what happened to Cuthbert.
Well, no, I don't think that he's blaming him, but I think it's maybe putting him in a spot where he's like, Cuthbert's someone that may be like an avatar for who I am from Eddie's perspective. Someone you cared about, someone that was with you at some point. You're asking me to be in that same role, to be with you, beside you in your journey.
What good?
Where the fuck did it get? Yeah. Where did it get him? I don't think he's been asking it knowing the end to Cuthbert. I think he's just saying like, hey, let me ask you honestly, you gave me your fucking sales pitch, like what's the first thing you do with a salesman if you're like with with a car or whatever it might be, a house, like you start to ask the fucking questions and they don't want to answer. That's your primary thing, right? I think this is him doing that. It's at the spot where you're sitting there at a car dealership looking at an SUV. Like the last thing they want to talk to you about is miles per gallon because it's a fucking SUV. So you got to bring that up because the salesman's not going to. I feel like this is maybe Eddie's spot where it's like, or with a house, it's like, hey, how many people have been murdered here? Whatever it might be. Like you got to bring that shit up. And I think that's him now where he's like, okay, you've given me your fucking sales pitch that you have crafted for me. Well, let's start fucking digging into this.
Let's talk about what's what's happened before and what's going to happen to me.
Yeah. Where's my role in this?
Let's look at the track record here.
Yeah.
And
again, not in my opinion, it's not to blame Roland. It's more of just like, what's in it for me? What was in it for fucking Cuthbert? Did he get the shit that you're trying to pitch me on? And I think that what Roland's silent because he doesn't really have an answer that.
There is no answer to that.
Yeah, there isn't. So that's the way I interpret it. It's Eddie again, kind of being cunning a little bit to kind of be in that spot to like. And also to use something that he has there, right? Like he's caught the fact that Roland talks in his sleep, and he's kind of using that against him. And I don't think that's necessarily even saying that I don't mean that to mean that it's a bad thing even. Like he's using what ammo he has, right? And maybe that's the thing that a gunslinger would do, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way I kind of view it. Not necessarily that he's blaming Roland, but more of just like, come on, man. Like, all right, you gave me your sales pitch. Let me fucking poke some holes in it and defend it for me. Like that's
Let me ask a couple questions about this pyramid scheme you got going on here.
yeah. Let me kick the tires on this before we sign the old contract.
Yeah, exactly.
As he's in his buyer's remorse period now.
What's that? 18% interest? No, I don't think so.
yeah, no doubt. That's the way I've always viewed it. But no, it's interesting though, and again, I think that it's well written in the in the fact that we can have this conversation. You know, there's other times I read fiction and it's just like, oh yeah, like it's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah,
it's like the difference between like a sandbox video game and like the linear, you know, ones where it's just like, this is the one path you walk, you know, like Stephen King does a good way of writing it to where you can kind of see things from multiple perspectives, which I appreciate. And then it goes on here and it says, you know, we call this back home, what? A Mexican standoff. And then, you know, they're look at each other for a bit, and then a little bit further down it says the brown hands, because they kind of get distracted, it says the brown hands reappeared, only now they held a purse. It opened, and suddenly the hands were scooping things seemingly almost certainly at random into the purse. Well, you're collecting quite a crew, Roland, Eddie said, bitterly amused. First you got your basic white junkie, now you got your basic black shoplift. But Roland was already moving towards the doorway between the worlds, moving swiftly, not looking at Eddie at all. I mean it, Eddie screamed. You go through and I'll cut your throat. I'll cut your fucking throat. And before he could finish, the gunslinger was gone, and all that was left to him was a limp, breathing body lying upon the beach. So I think that what it really comes down to here is this Mexican standoff is Roland doesn't care.
Roland don't give a shit.
Yeah, he's probably been in worse standoffs in his life. So,
God, I don't even want to imagine that.
I mean, it really is. I mean, it ultimately comes down to, I think, from Roland's perspective, though, is it's rolling the dice, right? It comes down to, you know, do you feel this person is the murderer that he's portraying himself to be? Even if he's not, you know, is the mania that he has to get back enough to override potentially the fact that he maybe isn't a killer, but may cause him to still kill. Like, it's a lot for Roland to kind of roll the dice on, but I think that, like, I don't know, I've kind of interpreted up to this point that Roland's probably a dude that rolls the dice fairly often in his life. You know, going back to even the first couple chapters there with Brown and stuff, like, he's always rolling the dice, you know, even just eating food from Brown or Allie at the bar, like all those things are rolling the dice. Any of those things could have been poisoned. You know, he's falling right on the trail of the Men in Black. Like, I feel like he's a dude that rolls the dice fairly often. So find that interesting. What do you got next?
Basically, right here, Eddie has a little bit of internal dialogue to finish up the chapter and everything. For a moment, Eddie only stood there, unable to believe that Roland had done it. Had really gone ahead and done this idiotic thing in spite of his promise, his sincere fucking guarantee, as far as that went, of what the consequences would be. He stood for a moment, eyes rolling like the eyes of a frightened horse at the onset of a thunderstorm. Except, of course, there was no thunderstorm, except for the one in his head. All right, God damn it. There might only be a moment. There was all the gunslinger might give him, and Eddie damn well knew it. He glanced at the door and saw the black hands freeze, and with a gold necklace half in and half out of a purse, there already glittered like a pinata's cache of treasure.
Pirates
cache.
Pirates cache. That's a hard one to say.
Pirates cache of treasure. Although he could not hear it, Eddie sensed that Roland was speaking to the owner of the black hands. He pulled the knife from the gunslinger's purse and then rolled over the limp, breathing body which lay before the doorway. The eyes were open but blank, rolled up to the whites. Watch, Roland, Eddie screamed. That monstrous, idiotic, never-ending wind blew in his ear. Christ, it was enough to drive anyone bug shit. Watch very closely. I want to complete your fucking education. I want to show you what happens when you fuck over the Dean brothers. He brought the knife down to the gunslinger's throat.
Yeah, again, he's not doing a whole lot to win me over. Like, even there's spots there where some of that argument, I'm like, he's got a point. And then at this point, I'm just like, all right, I fucking hate him. Like, Roland can just turn around and shoot this motherfucker now. Again, I'm just like, it's one of those things, like, because I, at this point, I'm fairly invested in Roland, that it's just like, and again, like, even the first time reading it, I think that, like, it was just kind of like writing him off as just a junkie. And then with this, it was just the spot where it's like, it's going to take a lot to overcome this for me, for this character to kind of overcome this, I don't know, this hole he's digging himself in for me.
Did you ever think that you would like Eddie?
At this spot right here, reading it, no. I mean,
Mhm.
and honestly, I would even say long term. I know this is a book club, so we're not going to go too deep in things. I still think that to this point, we could talk about it deeper in a round table. But I said to this point, I still think there's an element of distrust I have for Eddie, even going all the way through the story because of this. You know, it's one of these things that it's like this is in your past. This is something that could always crop back up. I don't know, and maybe that's not fair, but it is something that there's always like an underlying element of just like, you know, yeah, he'll always be the dude that put a knife to Roland's throat, despite the fact that that would have fucked him over too. You know, like that's just something you got to keep it from my perspective. You got to keep in mind. It's like
I gotcha.
the dude that's willing to fuck himself over to prove a point. Like that's dangerous. I don't know. That's,
Yeah, it always makes me think of like I can't remember what movie it was, but there was one where a guy, oh, it's Speed, you know, shoot the hostage
Oh yeah.
kind of thing, where like you have to deal with that thought. Instead of shoot the hostage, you have to shoot yourself
Yeah.
to get to the bad guy.
Yeah.
You know, put your hand up over the gun and then shoot. You know, it
Yeah.
seems like a fucking ridiculous idea. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
here, is that
yeah. It's like it takes a certain.
It's idiotic. It's something. It takes. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I just think that it's like I said, I guess I'm just sold for Roland at this point. But yeah, it's just one of those things like it's hard to get over that. I know you have them. You know, I'm assuming like for instance like The Mist. I'm assuming there's a point that the character that I'm referring to gained some dislike from you, but wasn't quite to the level of full on hatred, you know, during the course of that story, right? And I feel like that's a spot where like this is moving into that realm where it's like, all right, well, here's something I'm pretty much not going to be able to forgive. You know, he doesn't, you know, like this isn't that like a full blown like, okay, that's it. This is like top 10 hated characters or anything crazy like that. Like, but it's at least moving down that path where it's like, okay, this is like something you can't come back from, dude. Like you're basically threatening the hero of my story. And especially in a way that's going to fuck yourself over. It doesn't really help you. Like, okay, if it meant killing him and that was going to allow him then to move back and just suddenly like, if he knew, for instance, he would just like suddenly flash back to his own when New York City, then it's like, okay, you have a lot to gain there then. Like that would be almost be more acceptable for me.
Mhm.
But like whereas this, it's like you would end up eventually dead.
This is gonna fuck you over.
Yeah, this is suicide basically. Like you're just gonna go down and lay down on the beach for the fucking lobstrosities to take out because I mean unless you wanted to trust Roland's guns to try to take you out, but like I don't know. It's just yeah, it's bizarre to me, I guess, and so it's something that's always going to be there and the foundational thing. And then like again, though, I think that's a good thing though because I think that makes him again, it's a real character. You know, it isn't just your knight in shining armor. Like what makes interesting characters is that they do have moral failings. You know, and I don't know. Yeah, it's just this is a little bit further than your normal in some ways. You know, threatening. In my opinion, like the hero,
Yeah.
you know, from this perspective, because I've now followed him through, and we did just hit during the course of this book club. We hit according to Kindle, we're now 52% into the book, so we've now and we were 40 something early on, so we did we crossed the halfway mark.
Could you do me a favor?
What?
Can you repeat that real fast about how Roland's the hero of the story?
No, I will not self-incriminate.
Well, I mean, we got it on
anything.
tape, so I mean, unless you're gonna edit that out, let's go ahead and just record that real fast. That Exhibit A that Tad says Roland is the hero of the story.
Proverbial, right? Like the one that you're following the whole time, right? Like
the hero of the story.
Already trying to prep yourself for the next episode.
I've already got myself prepped, but I mean, if you're gonna give me Exhibit A and that's all I'm gonna need, I'll take it.
Oh man, if the glove doesn't fit, Chewbacca's a Wookiee. All right, so that is actually the end of this chapter, and with the time wise, I think that's going to pretty much put us to the end for this episode. Yeah, so this has been fun. We've gone through quite a bit now. I don't know where we started this year, book club wise. I want to say that we were in Drawing the Three, though, weren't we? Or have we spent a whole year in here, or were we still finishing up the Gunslinger?
Honestly, I think we were finishing up Gunslinger. Or was it?
We may have, because like thinking about like how much the year
With the
before,
movie.
yeah, the movie really threw us off the book club game. So yeah, maybe we have finished a book this year, because this is kind of the wrap up for the year now. This is going to be our last book club of 2018. We got one more episode before we go into our holiday break. That we've kind of our general.
We got
thing.
into Drawing of the Three early this year. Part 2 was right around January, February. What it says here.
Part 2 of the Drawing of the Three.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we started this book last year then. we would have started we would have started book 2. Part 1 would have been in December of 2017.
It says book club Drawing of the Three Part 1 2 years ago. But for some reason, it's
Okay,
it's recognizing things from like March were 1 year ago is what it's saying.
Yeah, it's not giving you like an exact counter. It's just a rough
no,
thing.
Unfortunately, it doesn't give me on podcast setting. It doesn't give me the date that we published the.
No, I mean it's fine though. So either way, during the course of this year, we've come a long ways though, from basically being at the very opening of book 2, to now being about halfway through. We're definitely, hopefully, everyone knows by this point the way our book clubs work. We're usually a little bit more long form with things. Tangents are always abounding and stuff. But no, we've gone through a lot. We've hit the 52% mark now, according to Kindle, with where we're leaving off. And I'm hoping everyone has enjoyed this year for the book club crowd. And yeah, we look forward to picking up on the other side of that door.
Oh shit! No, we started it way. I read that wrong. Final episode of 2017 was roundtable number 49. That was 11 months ago.
Yeah.
So it actually is telling us the right. So we started Drawing of the Three 2 years ago. In December of 2017. I mean 2016.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I just scrolled back here. Drawing of the Gunslinger Chapter 2. I went too far. Yeah. Drawing of the Three Part 2. Second live show details was for February 25th, 2017. So we had to have started Drawing of the Three in December of 2016.
Okay, I'm
wow,
kind of
damn, dude, damn.
Yeah, that's roundtable, unfound door, roundtable. I'm like pulling up the thing from the other side that would probably be a little bit more exact.
Right between
book club part
roundtables 27 and 28 was Drawing of the Three Part 2, and then Drawing of the Three Part 1 was right in between roundtables 23 and 24, and we're in the 60s.
Yeah, that is true. So let's see.
Does it give you a date?
Yeah, part 1, November 23rd, 2016.
Holy shit!
Okay, in our defense though,
we had an entire year,
almost an entire year
dedicated to a movie.
Of almost no book clubs. So, yeah, either way, it's been some time, but I feel like we're moving now overall. Some of this stuff is still introductory. I mean, this episode, for instance, we went through learning a lot about Odetta and a little bit about Detta, and then getting back to this fight with Roland and Eddie. So I don't know. It's
basically, it's not fair to count 2017 towards how long we've been doing Drawing of the Three, because there was a movie release that we were focused on.
Yeah, but we've got through a lot this year. So yeah, for the book club crowd, I don't even know. We don't get a lot of emails with people saying they only listen to book club, so it may not be anyone. But if there is anyone, this is going to be the last episode you hear for 2018, and we'll see you again in 2019, the year of the turtle, right? 2019.
Say thank you, Si. Okay, so you don't play Pokemon Go at all?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Know what Pokemon are. Really.
I have to show you.
I always get shamed when I say something and
it was definitely after our time, because even like me, when I got into it, was
my younger brother's really into Pokemon,
right?
So it was after after my generation,
and he's a year younger than me, and then 2 years younger than us. You're younger than us?
In there somewhere, yeah.
You're 2 younger than us. So I'm not even kidding. You can, in Pokemon Go, you can rename your Pokemon. And I have this one. I wanted to show you real fast.
This is a tangent that upsets me. I don't know about this Pokemon nonsense.
I'm going to name him Matrid. Behold the turtle of enormous girth.
It's a turtle with a tree on it.
Yeah. I'm going to rename him Matrid when I go through and rename all my Pokemon. So.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us this year for book clubs. It's been fun, and if you are if you're listening to these because of spoiler avoidance, then see you next year. But if not, we will definitely see you guys next time for the Flag Summit. The
big show of the year is going to be the last one. If you guys don't tune in because of spoilers, definitely don't tune in next week, because it's going to be a huge podcast about the ending and everything like that. You do not want to tune in for that one. The big thing is that if you are okay with a little bit of spoilers, though.
Yeah, if you're listening to these just as part of, you listen to all of our shows, and you're part of the regular fall audience that listens to roundtables, yeah, you don't want to miss it. And I'm thinking, the best thing we could probably do is throw a poll up on the social medias about who won the debate, right?
Oh no. There's no going to be no win or loss.
That's the point of a debate.
No, there's no going to be no win or loss. It's simple fact versus lies is all it is.
I would agree with that.
So that's
facts versus lies.
So let's just let's not get into let's pull back, Tad. Let's separate. Get the ref between us. Go to your corners.
I think there'll be.
It's not time.
No, I'm just saying. I think there has to be a poll up just so people can kind of.
All right.
We got to be able to gauge it. We got to know what kind of effect we may have had. I can't. I mean, we can eventually, hopefully, just see everyone on my side. That would be the hope. But yeah, so that's it for book club. So we'll see you guys next year.
Chat is terrible.
We'll hit you up with the stuff. If you want to subscribe to us, you can do that on iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. If you could rate and review us on iTunes, we'd love that. You can find the show notes, nothing for this episode, but the show notes in general are on darktowerpalaver.com. And if you want to engage with us, you can do that in many ways. Peter can let you know.
You can email us, darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. We're going to be on the Twitter. That's @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. Which one do you want to put the? Do you want to do one on each?
I'm gonna
Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look up which, because I think you can do polls on both. But if not, I'll try to
do a poll from your Facebook that automatically posts to your Twitter that pulls results from both.
No.
Oh, that would be nice.
No, yeah, it would be, but they're unfortunately two separate companies.
Let's make an app that does it automatically. $10 billion idea. I'm telling you.
No, but we might be able to just throw it up on both and then. Whatever.
Do the math.
Yeah, it's because I think you can. I'm almost positive you can do it on Twitter. I've seen Twitter polls.
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it on Twitter.
I think Facebook you can do polls on Facebook. I think if you're in a group, but I don't think you could just like post a poll on your wall.
Yeah, you can. One of my friends from work literally just posted a poll on his wall asking if someone said, "Hey, let's hang out Friday Eve." What are they talking about? Thursday night or Friday night?
That's some wordery there.
I'm not even shitting you. I can pull it up on Facebook right now. Well, he has it on his page.
In the old days, you used to not be able to do it except for in a group. But either way, I know we can do it in a group. So we'll have it up on the Dark Tower Palaver thing.
Let's go to Dark Tower. Let's go to Dark Tower Palaver.
But either way, we'll sign off for the podcast at least. And
bye, guys.
Say to everyone, as we always do, long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks. Okay.
All right. Yeah. So everyone in the live stream, thanks for joining us. It was fun. Steve, thanks for joining us. We had Cody early on. I don't know if he's still with us. Hopefully he is. And then maybe at least one other person, if it's still counting Peter. So thanks everyone for joining us. It was a lot of fun. I don't know. Yeah. Can't wait for the Flag Summit and the end of the year. Can't wait to jump into 2019. Hopefully we'll be seeing some news on the series. I feel like we should be seeing something pretty soon. So
hopefully,
yeah, should be fun. But yeah, thank you guys and see you next time.
Bye.